All right, we are live. So welcome everyone to another Matt Maran Motoring live stream here on the Matt Maran Motoring YouTube channel. Hope you're all having a great weekend here. Thanks so much for stopping by. So like all the other usual live streams, we're going to go for about 2 hours or so. I'll give priority answering. Then who does a super chat or a super thanks, as well as anyone who's a member there with the green usernames, they always get that priority answering. If you'd also like that, there's a link in the description. And so let me see. I see we have a bunch of people already have joined in here, and I'm actually on time tonight, which is usually something that's not happening. So I'm sure a few people will come in as we have everyone assuming I'm going to be late. But I see we have Theodore, Kevin, Brian, Danny, Anthony, and Luke, Vishal, B. Mitchell, and Weedman. Thanks so much for stopping by, everyone. So I see Theodore says good evening, and as does Kevin and Brian, and Danny says hello. Drove yesterday and today. Just got done with a week of marching band camp outside 90+ degree heat on a turf football field. Yeah, not fun, I bet, but always very impressive. Actually, our local high school just did their like opening concert or whatever, after band camp. They have showing off everything they learned in the past 2 weeks or so, and we actually went to that. My daughter loves marching bands and all that, so that was really fun to see. So the hard work you guys do is very much appreciated. You make a lot of little kids and lots of adults happy as well. Marching bands are awesome, so that's really cool. And Anthony says, hey everyone, not many spots this week except for a GMC Typhoon and a first gen yellow NSX. Always wanted one of those. That's awesome. Yeah, great spots there. Yeah, NSX is always one of those cars I think for a lot of people was like one of the poster cars you put on the wall and dreamed of as a kid. And Danny says rare spots for him were a 1998 Subaru Legacy wagon, a Buick Rainier CXL V8, and a 1987 Oldsmobile Cutlass two-door. Very nice. Awesome spots. And Anthony says he also went cruising in my friend's 72 Stingray. That was a fun 2 hours. I bet. That's awesome. Man, yeah, I've never ridden a classic Corvette. That's really cool. I mean, I guess you could say technically I reviewed the, I think, 84. So that's classic, but none of the like really old ones. So that's cool. I'm sure it was a ton of fun. And Luke says, is it hard to be quiet during the POV drives? I notice when by myself, I comment to myself about cars I see, people walking, etc. Not too much. The real tricky thing, and people pointed out this in the first few POVs there, is you can hear my breathing a little bit because of the way the camera's positioned and the mic set up. And so that's been something I've had to like be conscious to like not breathe or burp or anything like that. That's kind of been my main focus, is to really make sure I'm breathing as quietly as possible. Because even like a deep like inhale exhale, like you can hear, and I know people in the first few POVs were like, man, it's like Darth Vader's filming this or something. So like I had to make sure that's the only thing. I don't really, there's sometimes where I will also comment about stuff that I see even if I'm alone, but whenever I'm in the POV mode, I kind of focus on filming still. And I mean, I'm enjoying the drive, but I have to always have in the forefront of my mind, like, this is something that everyone else is going to see. So that's why my driving has to be perfect. That's why, everything has to be, I have to be mindful of all that stuff. And that includes how I breathe and how I move my head and all those types of things. So but it is kind of tough sometimes if I see someone who, like, in a few of the POVs, like there was a couple of cool spots that I had in some of those, or someone that didn't take their turn correctly at a stop sign, and things that I usually would be commenting or reacting to, that I have to just not do that. But it's a fun thing to do, the POVs, though. I'm enjoying them, and I hope you guys are still enjoying them too. And thanks for watching them as well. And Vishal says, hello all. I saw a Pontiac GHET and a Gen 1 Audi R8 tonight. Very nice. Speaking of the Pontiac, that reminds me, last evening I saw a G6 GT with, like, they have that giant like whale tail spoiler on the back of them, and just super rare these days, at least around here, to see something like that. So that was kind of cool. I saw a few other things, but I always forget. I need to like write them down, because I have a terrible memory with like all the things that I see throughout the course of the week. I saw a few things were kind of off the wall, interesting. Nothing exotic, but just some interesting stuff. I'm sure like I know B Mitchell, he's going to be giving us some of the info about Monterey here. That's everyone who was at Monterey. They won corresponding this week for sure with all the cool stuff that showed up there. And speaking of that, P. Mitchell said he was watching the auctions in Monterey over the last few days between working on my Lincoln Continental Mark V during the week. So no live spots, but the top sale in Monterey was a new Ferrari Daytona SP3, a one-off sold for charity that fetched $26 million. Window sticker was 3.5, so the rest is a write-off. Yeah, it's kind of crazy how that world works with like giant charity write-offs, because I mean, a write-off doesn't mean you're actually getting that full discount. It's a percentage, at least if you're doing your taxes properly. But, the fact that people can drop that kind of money and it just like doesn't really matter, in a way. And it also goes to charity, which is great. It's kind of a win-win. But, people that are just like, writing these off to their businesses or whatever, it's definitely seems like a hack that I wish the rest of us had access to. But yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, I love the Daytona SP3. So that's pretty cool. I'm surprised though that like there wasn't something honestly that went for more. I know some people have been saying that the exotic car market has started to kind of contract a little bit. I'm not sure if you've kind of kept a pulse on that, B. Mitchell, or if you have any info, because I haven't looked into it too deeply, but I kind of wonder if the market was a little bit more stingy this year because of all the market uncertainty and everything, or if people were still spending like there's no tomorrow, which is entirely possible with the ever-growing billionaire class that we are fostering here. But anyway, Luke says, I was showing my neighbors your acceleration reaction videos yesterday, and they said your laughter was contagious. I'm glad they enjoyed them. Yeah, especially some of those older reactions are really funny. So I'm glad that they're enjoying them. And thanks for sharing, with your neighbor and all that as well. Word of mouth always helps, even if it is just a few good laughs. I always appreciate it. And Vishal says, the RSX is certainly something. Kind of wish it used the ZDX name instead of what ZDX currently is. Yeah, I know. It is a shame. I mean, if you have never heard of an RSX before, or you haven't paid attention to that, like a non-car person, coming into this, the X in the name would suggest some kind of crossover these days. So that's the only little shred of a defense I can give Acura for using RSX. But I mean, what's wrong with using? Yeah, I mean, you said ZDX already taken, but we're just doing alphabet soup here. Like, pick any other letters, call it the QSX, or I mean there's literally anything possible there. I mean, we got 26 letters in the alphabet to pick from, and even if you say, oh well, Q would remind people of, I don't know, Aston Martin or Infinity, or I mean there's still plenty of available letters there. XSX or something. I mean, I could go through all 26. Yeah, but like it's just, yeah, sadly, it's a trend that doesn't surprise us anymore, just like all the other horrific news stories we hear about that don't even faze us anymore. 5 or 10 years ago, it would have all been like shocked, but now like half of these things aren't even newsworthy. It's the same thing in the car world. One disappointment after another with some of these questionable things, and we all just shrug it off these days and say, well, there's another name, shot to heck, and it is what it is. But yeah, and that. The styling is also interesting. I mean, I don't hate it, but yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I'm very apathetic about it, I suppose. And Steven, thank you so much for the super chat. Sorry I missed it till now. He says, thoughts on the new Infinity concepts? Yeah, so they did what? Like, there's the track version of the QX80, which, between the, first off, they already have the Nismo. So yeah, I guess, this is, again, for the Infinity person that for some reason isn't happy with the Nissan Armada Nismo and they need to go, one further. I mean, it makes sense, I suppose, but I mean, even for the Nismo, I don't see any market for that. And then, to do it for an Infinity as well, where, people are even more concerned about appearances, I mean, there's going to be the handful of diehard, I suppose, Infinity fans, or people that want something more luxurious than a Nismo version of the Armada to tow their GTR to the track or something. but they're not going to be having a track edition. Like again, it's another symptom of this just backwards world we're living in, that like, why is there any kind of sporty version of that Infinity? I mean, I've driven it. I've spent a week with it. It's a giant beluga whale of an SUV, but that's a luxury SUV. That's what they're supposed to be. But there's no sporting pretensions. There's no hope there. It's gigantic. It's got a high center of gravity. It's supposed to be comfortable, and there's no reason to do that, in my opinion. I mean, I guess if they again have some of the parts already there, but it just seems like a waste of time. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'm just like just the times that we're living in, or me just getting old and jaded, or what. But I'm just like, so many of these things, I'm just like, this is dumb. This is dumb. Like, what's the point? And there was also like a rugged QX80, which I know more and more companies are doing these concepts of like rugged luxury. And okay, I can see that. Like Genesis did the concept. Cadillac just did one here at Monterey. Something a little leaner. Okay, fine. Obviously, no one's ever going to actually take it off road. They'll, drive it on a gravel road and be very happy with their purchase. But like, I mean, whenever again you're talking about something as massive as those vehicles, it just seems like, again, no one's taking that thing off roading. It's just weird. And then I think the other, correct me if I'm wrong, I think there was just 3 concepts. I think the QX65 was new. And that's another one that, I think makes a little more sense. But, you hear about all the German companies that are going to probably be getting rid of their coupe versions. And so I think Infinity is just a little too late to that party. I mean, there'll be some people that probably go for it because they still sell pretty well. But, that's another one that is a large SUV. Again, you will get some people. I see more GLE coupes and stuff like that around here than I'd like to admit. There's a market for it. So that one I can't blame them too much, even if I'm still a little meh about it. But interesting choices there by Infinity this year. And YH, thank you so much for a super chat as well. He says, just came from a cruise hunting for cats, didn't find any. Guess the coyote purring made them go into their little holes. I'm glad you're enjoying the peacocking there in the Mustang, and hope you've been enjoying your week with it there. I hope you get a shot at a Hellcat someday. I'm not sure how popular drag strips are around you, but I'm sure a lot of them like to hang out there. So that's where I would head to, especially on a Friday or Saturday night. Might have a little bit better luck there. And I see Newton says the mic's really bad today. Okay, mic's crackling again. Man, I hope I don't have to restart the stream like I had to do a couple weeks ago here. But yeah, because I'm pretty sure if I try and mess with anything on the camera, it's just not going to work very well. So I might have to just bail on it. Luke says it's not too bad. I'm sure it probably just goes in and out. I don't know why it crackles. It's literally just my iPhone just doing the stream. I think it's got to be YouTube, because like this is the second mic that does this, so I'm pretty sure it's not the actual mic. It's got to be something with the stream. But all right, everyone says that they think it's okay. We'll proceed. If it gets really bad though, just let me know, and I'll just try and reconnect and do another one here. And thanks for letting me know. And see, Wyatt says not too bad, like Canadian whiskey, better than nothing. I like Canadian whiskey. I love Canadian Club actually, but okay, I'm glad it doesn't seem too bad. Let me know if it gets bad though. But continuing on here, so let me see where we were. So I see B Mitchell said the actual real top sale was a 1 of 2 alloy bodied 1962 Ferrari 250 GT California Spider at $23 million. Very nice. That's cool. And Wheatman says hello from NorCal. I'm not sure if you got to enjoy any of the festivities as well, Wheatman, but thanks for stopping by. And yeah, I see Zachary also, and Ace and Dave. Thanks everyone. B Mitchell said the weirdest sale was a stretch limo conversion of a 69 Volkswagen Beetle. It sold for $300,000. Yeah, why would anyone? I feel like, I don't know if it's necessarily money laundering, but I feel like there's a lot of these weird high dollar purchases that, there's a questionable amount of money going through some of these things, and it's like, what's the deal here? I think it's the same thing with the art world, of like, oh, I'm just gonna slap some ketchup on a piece of paper and sell it for a ton of money. It's like, something weird is going on here. Like, that's not actually, no one actually thinks that's worth anything. I don't care how much spin or marketing you put behind it. Yeah, and I also saw that there was a skinny beetle there. There was like a beetle that someone had like sliced out the middle third of it or whatever, and just then glued the other two thirds together and made it skinny. I mean, fun, I guess. It's really impressive the amount of time people have on their hands. But I'm jealous and happy for them that people have found the time to do things like that. But very interesting there. And Linda, thanks for stopping by, and Black Death as well. And Luke says, does your daughter ever ask why she rides in so many different cars? No, she knows what I do. She, it's kind of funny. She'll be walking in sometimes and see me talking on the computer screen as I'm editing a car review or whatever. And so she knows I help people find cars that they'll enjoy and film them and stuff. So she's totally into it. She loves checking out the cars and, giving her impressions on them. And she like really likes to like ride in them, even whenever it's not like the most comfortable for her. Like right now we have a Volvo EX30, and the X30 backseat is tiny, so tiny in fact that she would not have fit behind me or Beth in that. So she's actually in the middle seat in her, giant car seat there. And that works just simply because she can have her feet on the center armrest there, which I will make sure I clean off. And I try not to trash the cars, but that's how we're driving around. But she really wanted to drive in this thing so badly, even though she's less comfortable, just because she likes trying out the new car. So, I mean, maybe there's a little bit of that's in the blood. We'll see if she decides to carry on the mantle here and 50 years or whatever, or join, sooner than that if she wants. But it's really fun to share that with her. And Grant says, stopping by for a minute, been fighting the flu all week. Oh, that sucks. Sorry to hear, Grant. He says, cool spot of the week is a Ruelto and a 911R here in Atlanta. That's awesome. Very nice spots to manage to find while you're battling the flu there. But hope you feel better soon. And thanks for stopping by. And Jazz as well, thanks for stopping by. And Stratus says, happy Sunday all. Only spot was a Wrangler with Jurassic Park decals. That's always fun to see. That's awesome. And let me see. Looks like, no one else complaining about the mic, so we'll keep going here. Stratus also says, there's minor mic static. And Anthony says, my friend just dropped in a new 350 V8 in it. The last engine, not original, just burned oil and gave up on him. It still needs some work, but classics have a certain charm to them. Absolutely. Especially, I always loved those early 70s Stingrays. I thought that was actually one of the coolest designs they've ever done for Corvette, in my opinion. Probably an unpopular opinion because it still seems like 70s Corvettes don't get a lot of love. But I always loved the 70s Corvettes. I mean, yes, performance-wise, I guess they were the worst or whatever, but nothing that you can't fix in the aftermarket. And that's cool. He was able to put a new engine in it, give it a new life, and hopefully have a blast with it for a long time to come. That's awesome. And they do have a charm. I think, that's the thing. I highly recommend that everyone who is an enthusiast, if you haven't driven a classic yet, just try one once, because it's a whole new automotive experience, having that much immersion, that much connection to a car, especially if you're talking like no power steering, no power brakes, like a truly old car. It's really, really, I think, refreshing and fun, and kind of shows you the potential, and also kind of as a benchmark for how good cars could be, and kind of the goal for modern cars as far as steering feel and all these things that were just natural byproducts back in the day that now everyone like pulls their hair out in engineering departments trying to like get a little glimmer of that past glory with the way steering feels, the way throttle response feels, brakes, whatever, and it's really cool. So highly recommend even just rent a classic for a couple hours or something. It's really cool. Anyway, Nicholas, thanks for stopping by. And Danny says, when I was driving the Bolt merging onto a highway near me twice, 2 days in a row, I have a lead foot and floored it too hard and spun the front tires with the traction control on both times. I was like, whoops. Yeah, that's especially the electric torques, that instant punch is definitely something you got to manage in the rain, because otherwise it is very easy to spin the tires for sure. Glad we're having a little bit of fun and keeping it safe there for the traction control too. And Dave says, do you think you'll ever get bored of driving? What might make that happen? That's a really good question. I don't know. I think I won't be bored with driving ever, partially because, again, I'm very spoiled being able to always drive new things and always having a little bit of surprise with something new, or, something that's just done a little differently. That I'm like, just that little every week is kind of fun. As far as my own personal cars, though, even, I mean, I truly just love the act of driving. And I've even contemplated, like, again, if I have to ever get another job after this, if, YouTube continues to collapse on me here, one of the jobs I've considered is like, these people that do these medical courier jobs where they rack up, 100,000 miles a year on a car or something. That's kind of been my hesitation. If I were to go to that path, is would I hate driving then? Because one, I'm doing it all day, every day for work. And it's not particularly fun driving, even if I am getting to pick the car that I'm driving in, because a lot of these medical couriers, they do get to just pick whatever they want as long as it has enough space in the back. And I know there's one guy in Pittsburgh here. He went through a GR Corolla before that got totaled by a deer at 60,000 miles or something like that. But he had a RAV4 hybrid. He's all over the place. But right now, I think he's running a Civic Type R and a Land Cruiser, actually, or I think is 2 medical courier cars currently. So I mean, like, Civic Type R, like putting 100,000 miles a year on a Civic Type R, I don't know if I would hate that or not. But that's kind of my only concern, is if I did too much driving, I think that could, get to the point of getting over it at some point. So I kind of am a little bit careful about how much driving I do. I mean, I still clearly don't do enough driving. I definitely would love to do more, but I think there may be one of those mentalities of a little bit too much of a good thing is bad, So I think that's kind of the main concern, is just, if I was clocking 50,000 miles a year or more, then I'd probably start to dread getting into the driver's seat eventually, but that's the only thing I can think of. Otherwise, I mean, maybe if there was ever, a really bad accident or something, knock on wood, but if there's something like that maybe made it a little bit, less enjoyable or something like that. But, it's been something even after accidents and stuff, crazy trees falling out of the sky and stuff. I still love get behind the wheel every day, even though it's a risky thing. We all do. I absolutely love it. I don't know if that'll ever change. That's a great question, though. Thanks for asking, Dave. And BT, thanks so much for joining the club here. I really appreciate it. I'll look out for your questions here going forward. And I really appreciate the support. And let me see here. Other questions. Blooper Reel says, hello, I just moved from Florida to New Jersey. My mom needs a good snow climate car. So, in a place like Jersey, you definitely want to have, something that, probably wouldn't be rear-wheel drive, for example. But honestly, you occasionally get a few bad snows over there. But my understanding of it, any other New Jersey residents, they can chime in. I'm here in Pittsburgh, but similar kind of weather, I think, where, you get a handful of bad snows a year, but don't think you need to like go out and get some like snowmobile of a car. They usually do a pretty good job if you're not super out in the middle of nowhere. If you're in a suburb, they do a good job of cleaning up the roads pretty quickly. So it shouldn't be too bad. I mean, I'd say, it doesn't hurt to have all-wheel drive, but also front-wheel drive with winter tires make all the difference in the world. If you have winter tires, if you really want to, have the best traction possible, even with all-wheel drive, absolutely get a set of winter tires for whatever you're going to buy. But beyond that, it completely depends on what your mom's looking for there, what she needs, space wise, comfort level wise, price wise. I mean, that's a very wide net. So lots of good stuff out there. There's no one best snow climate vehicle for everybody. Everyone has different needs and wants. So that's one thing. If you want to send an email or something, more than happy to discuss. I also do these one-on-one car consultations now, and there's a link in the description I've included now for that, but just on mattmaranmotoring.com. More than happy to do a one-on-one call with you, your mom, whoever, and kind of figure out what would be the best thing for her specific needs and wants. That's why I do those, is to help people find a car that they'll love and something that'll fit them very, very well. And to do that well, I need to have a lot more context. But feel free, again, if you also just want to, throw out a few ideas you guys might already have here in the chat or whatever, more than happy to still talk about it. But that's going to be the best place to get the best advice. And I'd love to help if that's something you're interested in. And Ace of Spades says, thinking of getting my first EV this week, thinking Ioniq 5 lease or buying used. Did you like this vehicle and think it would make for a good entry point on EVs? The Ioniq 5 is very well done. I even said back when we got the Mach-E that if it were up to me, it would have been an Ioniq 5. They're really good cars. The driving is really well done. Like the brake regen is very well blended. It's a really nicely packaged vehicle. I've always loved the styling. Lease deals are probably pretty good there as well. And they made some nice improvements for 2025. The only thing, if you go back and look on the comment section of the Ioniq 5 review that I did, a couple months ago, there are a few people, I didn't highlight this in the review because one, I wasn't actually aware of it until after people were talking about it after the fact. And two, I don't really talk about recalls and things like that a whole lot, but there is I can't remember the letters. I think it's ICCB or something like that. Basically, one of the power inverter things, some people have fail. Now, it's one of these things where online people are far more vocal, and there's zillions of Ioniq 5s out running around, no problems. There's actually, I think, someone in South Korea that just passed, I think they passed 350 or 450,000 miles on their Ioniq 5 on original battery, original motors, original everything. And I think they said battery degradation was only, I think it was less than, maybe like 13% at the most. It might have even been less than that. But regardless, there's a few horror stories out there about them. I'll be upfront about that, and so you can look into that. But the thing to keep in mind, I remember this back when the EcoBoost, there was a few EcoBoost motors blowing up, and it made me really terrified about, my car having a ticking time bomb of a motor. But the thing is that, everyone who's happily driving around with no issues, they're not going on an Ioniq forum. They're not going onto a subreddit and saying, hey, my car is perfect. They probably don't even know those subreddits exist. They sell tons of Ioniq 5s that, drive around issue free. But, that's just one thing to make sure you check on and make sure that that's something you're comfortable with. Because it's something, unfortunately, they haven't fixed. Even with the 2025 refresh, it still has the same part. Now you have a warranty, and, that's what that's there for. And everyone gets a lemon sometimes as well. So it's, one of those things that happens to every car out there to some degree. And engineers know this. They engineer in a certain acceptable level of failure because you can't get to 100% perfection. You can't. So they've reached a level of cost savings and a level of, this equilibrium of like, okay, well, we could have a perfect 0% failure rate, but then it's going to cost us $5 extra per car. And then you multiply that out by, 300,000 Ioniq 5 sales or however many they're anticipating. That's a big amount. And then you say, okay, well, that's the amount that it costs for that. How much would it cost if, the one in every 50,000 Ioniq 5s that have this thing fail, we just fix their car and, do that cost analysis, what's cheaper. That's the way it is for every single car. And that's why you have every single car has some horror story and all that. So, that's the only thing I just want to make you aware of that. But like I said, it wouldn't stop me from getting Ioniq 5. If Beth had liked the styling, it would have been a front runner for us. She just still personally does not like the styling. She liked the way it drove. She actually just drove the 2025 here that I just had. She liked it. It's just she couldn't get behind the styling, unfortunately. And she also, once we tried the Lyric, she was hooked on that, and there was no going back after that. But before we drove the Lyric there, she liked the Ioniq. It just, I think in her mind, she would have rather had Mach-E still if it was the choice between those two, just because of the styling primarily. But I love Ioniq 5, highly recommend it, especially if you can get a good deal on one, absolutely. And I still may get an Ioniq 5 someday. I would love the end version if they depreciate to a point that I can, maybe swap into one of those whenever the Fiat 500e is done. If they depending on how things are by that point in time, whether I want an EV or I'm still pulled to the GR Corolla or something. But if I wanted like something as fun as GR Corolla, but I needed a more usable back seat, I think Ioniq 5N would absolutely be something I would, be hoping to get here in the future, because I absolutely love that. And so regular Ioniq 5 is also fantastic. And best of luck deciding Ace as well. But good on you for, hopefully maybe cashing in here on these lease deals while they last here for the next, 6 weeks or so. Let me see. So Chadwick, thanks for stopping by. And the Con 1000 says, hi, Matt, what do you think about the new Civic Hybrid? I love them. I think they're great. I did a review on one last year. You can definitely check out that video for all my thoughts on it, but I love Civic Hybrid. I think it really honestly makes it hard to justify even the SI anymore. Unless you must have that manual, you're getting better than SI performance with 50 mpg and no compromises. I guess some people don't love, the CVT kind of, it's not even a CVT, but the direct drive kind of thing you have there with the Civic Hybrid. But I personally have no issues with it, and I think it's great. So Civic Hybrid is awesome. Definitely check out my review for all the extra info. And Jordan says, is it legal to import a BYD EV into the U.S.? Would insurance recognize it? USA Auto Shop's able to service. Yeah, you would have no servicing support there, really. And insurance-wise, if the car is not allowed to be legally registered here, which it isn't, because what didn't originate in the States as far as the legalization, the certification process, that means that would then fall under the 25-year rule. So if it's 25 years or older, you can bring in whatever you want. But anything newer than that, the only way you're getting a BYD into the States is if you are a citizen of Mexico, because they have them down there. You can bring it in, but then you can't. I don't think you can register it here, even if you do bring it in. So the only way I've seen, BYDs or things like that, special circumstances, like the CEO of Ford, Jim Farley, he has the Xomi, I think, or however you say that name. He has one of their EVs for research purposes, but they can drive on manufacturer plates, so they don't have any rules as far as that goes. And otherwise, like a foreign diplomat, you're allowed to bring your car in for that. So that's why in DC, sometimes you see some real goofy cars. Oftentimes they're diplomats or foreign people that are allowed to bring their cars with them. So you'll see some of that. But those are the only ways you could bring in a BYD, which also is very confusing to me, because I checked and the EX30 that I have in my garage was assembled in China. And I think they have since ramped up production of there's a factory in Belgium that now does EX30. I think that one's up and running. So I'm assuming all other EX30s coming in, I'm hoping, are coming from Belgium. Because if poor Volvo is paying 100% tariff to bring in these little EX30s, they must be losing insane amounts of money on them. I'm assuming press cars, again, same kind of thing of like it's on a manufacturer plate. So they can bring in some of those for demonstration purposes. But I am actually driving a unicorn right now with having a Chinese built EV that I am currently driving. So that was kind of a surprise to me. But yeah, it's cool. And, it's interesting. I just saw a graph the other day that showed how, like, Thailand, because of BYD's emergence there, they have now gotten to the point where EVs have reached cost parity with gas. Like, they have gotten there already, because, well, it also helps that, China's pretty close to Thailand, but, they're able to, just swarm the market. And so as a result, like, the take rate is super high because they're super cheap and really nice cars. And as we see affordability get worse and worse in this country, Yeah, I think you're going to see more and more calls to just bring these vehicles in. And it kind of is funny how history repeats itself, because it's almost the same somewhat as, whenever the Japanese invaded, in the late 60s, early 70s, same kind of thing, where it really hurt the American car manufacturers. And obviously they never have recovered from that, because they lost their monopoly that the big three basically had, with a few small minor exclusions. But it really radically changed that and made everything, much more difficult. And, I mean, there's differences, with labor protections in China versus Japan. And, there's differences there. So it's not exactly the same. And that's why I'm not fully in support of it yet, as much as some other, colleagues are in this world. But, I kind of see it probably going the same way. Eventually, people will be like, these cars are better, they're cheaper, and we can't afford the stuff that's here in the States. And that's going to be the solution, I think, at some point. Might not happen in this administration. We'll see, and it may not ever happen at all. But, I think that the Chinese, this is a big prize for them. They want to, just from a business standpoint, I mean, it's a giant market, and you want to be in a giant market like this. And especially they know the affordability crisis here and all that. So I think, like I said, I think they're going to find a way at some point, whether they again buy Mexican factories and try and, skirt through stuff that way, or, again, I don't know why they haven't just bought brands that are struggling, like buy out the American division of Mitsubishi and just, throw your own stuff in there, or any other struggling brand, take your pick. And there's so many crazy ways I think they could get in, and they haven't. I'm kind of surprised. But I think eventually we will see them here one way or another. Just because, again, the product is just so much wildly better than what we have here already. And that gap's just going to keep getting wider and wider, especially with all the Western companies here just, wanting to be doing 2 steps forward, 1 step back with EV development. And, we got to figure out what the market wants and all this stuff, and just trying to cling on to gas as long as they can. It's just, we're going to be so far behind that once everyone finally does say, okay, we're ready for EVs, it's going to be like, well, we have these silly little antiques and everyone's, flying around in UFOs basically in China, So I think it's something, though, that it's going to happen eventually. And Fook says, don't give them ideas for the next NSX. Oh, no. Yeah, you're right. If Acura does, I don't think they're going to do the NSX name that dirty. But you would think they would respect RSX more than they did, too. So I guess, again, anything's on the table. But there would be some rioting at Acura's headquarters if they put NSX on anything other than a low-slung supercar, I think. But we'll see. Could be a new sport crossover, though. You're right, Fook. Oh, that's terrifying. And let me see. V. Mitchell says modern exotics certainly haven't contracted. They were printing money this week. Several records broke this week. Ferrari F40 LM did 10 million on the hammer last night. 2 regular F40s did 3.5. Interesting. Okay, well, that's good to hear. Maybe it's just certain parts where I was seeing some stuff depreciating quickly. I mean, I did hear that like some people have backed out of new Ferrari orders and things like that, which is, I think, is why I was hearing this consensus that, some of the order books have weakened for some of the exotics. Now, how much, I don't know. I'm sure they've probably rebounded just fine on those, because there's lots of people that are anxious to, bump their way up the list if they can. So I'm sure it's not a real problem, but it does seem like a few people were getting a little bit of cold feet there on their high-end exotic purchases, but clearly not in Monterey. So it's interesting. Thanks for the info there, B. Mitchell. And Darnell says there is a lot of people with money in California and Southern Florida to buy Sport Infinities for highways. I agree. The market is super limited. Yeah, you're right. I mean, any of these things, I've said, all kinds of things that don't make any sense, and they end up selling decently well. So we'll have to just sit back with our popcorn and wish Infinity the best, I suppose. And Serrata says, as long as the RSX has some piped in VTEC sounds, I mean, they might end up doing that. We'll see what they end up doing with that car. I know, Honda was playing around with the idea of having selectable sounds, and selectable sounds, I mean, to me, it's better than some spaceshipy kind of sound. So I'd be fine with that. But yeah, who knows how they play that. It'll be interesting to see. And let me see. We'll check in on the mic. I think everyone says Mike's okay now, or people are just living with it. No one's complaining, one or the other. Let me know if it is getting worse or anything though. But let me see. Where were we here? So Vishal says, I see a fair amount of X6s and GLE coupes in my area. I even saw a guy hauling some wood in his X6 at Home Depot. Well, at least someone's using it for the utility aspect, I suppose. But that's funny. And Triton Car Guy, thanks for stopping by. Dom says, how's the consultations going? Good to see you, Matt. And good to see you too, Dom. Consultations are going pretty well. It's not blowing up or anything yet, but I have had 2 different clients, and one person actually was a repeat. I talked to them once at the beginning of the week, and I talked to them again here at the end of the week to help as a follow-up on, they test drove something and, was looking into it more and wanting some extra advice there after the fact, and was able to chat with them twice. And so that was great. And so happy. I actually have, helped a couple of people here so far. And that's really exciting to me. I hope it continues to thrive and grow. I think it's just going to take time, but I'm happy that, 2 people so far have enjoyed it. And so, yeah, we'll see where it goes, but thanks for asking, Dom. I appreciate it. And let me see. So, okay. So YH says that it's a common issue for iPhone mics, apparently. So don't move because it's just too much movement causes it. Interesting. Okay. Well, I will try my best. I appreciate it. Now I actually have something to search on Google and try and figure out if there's any other remedies for that. But I appreciate that. Okay. I will try and stay still and see if that helps. Truck and Car Guy says, I saw a few interesting vehicles. A Huracan flew by my work earlier today. I saw a Santa Cruz with a Jurassic Park wrap. That's fun. And what I think was a Ram Rampage at a local mall. Wow, that's surprising. Someone must be visiting from Mexico. That's cool. And Luke says, I hope next gen SI gets more than 200 horsepower. I love that car. Manual, comfortable. It just needs like 15 to 40 more horsepower. I agree. I think Honda's mentality is kind of a little bit admirable. I'm not going to give them too much credit here, but they have resisted the urge to chase numbers and to give into that peer pressure, I suppose, of always having to outdo yourselves. And I think they truly believe in the joy of a 200 horsepower, well done manual transmission little sporty sedan. And it's almost retro in a way, so I can kind of appreciate the mentality, and I can kind of get behind where they're coming from there. But this is one of those things where you might have a conviction of this is what this car should be, and then you have the people that are actually buying it and keeping that car in production who say, well, this is what we want it to be. And it's this tug of war of what do you do? I mean, obviously they very clearly can make it more powerful if they wanted to, but they haven't. And, that does make it so that, whenever I'm doing a review, I always have to say the SI is the slowest one in this segment. GLI is faster, GTI is faster. Anything you mention is faster. And, at least the SI, has kind of held the line as far as pricing. I mean, it has gone up a lot in the past few years, but when you look again at the rest of the market, Elantra ends 35, everything else, GTI is now, 34. I think that's one of the most compelling bargains. 34 also for GLI. So there's a few others, at least it's a discount for the SI, but it is a little iffy still from a value standpoint. I mean, the good news though, if you do really love everything else about SI, very easy to get 15 to 40 more horsepower out of a tune on those. I mean, literally you have to do nothing else. Just literally, plug in a tuner or plug in your laptop, pay for a tune or whatever, and you have that power, so and that motor, it seems like, I don't know a ton about it, but it seems like people have modded it and it doesn't, just turn to dust. So I think, if you really love an SI, I just do a minor tune. Now you probably will lose your warranty doing that, which does suck. But, if you really want that car with that power, I think that's, at least there's a workaround for that. That's one of the nice things about turbos. There's not a whole lot that needs to be done to get a little more power out of it there. But yeah, I do love the SI though too. It is a car that even myself, I'm like, I would just probably spend a few grand more for a launcher N, but SI still is like really so well done that it is very tempting, to just live with the less power. Because the reality is, on the street, it still is fine most of the time. If you live in a place where you have long stretches of straight road, like Texas or something, it probably feels bad. But around here in the Northeast, I think it's a really perfect amount of power for something fun to ring out and actually take it to red line and not be immediately handcuffed. It's a nice little balance, I think. So I like the SI a lot still, regardless of the power deficiency. And Dave says, what's the oldest car you've driven? I'm pretty sure that would be the 57 Ford Ranchero that I did a review on. That was back in beginning of 2019, possibly. And that thing was so much fun. That review did terribly, but it was really fun to film, and I'm happy I did it for myself, if nothing else. But that was my first time driving 3 on the tree. I had known how to do it, and I had, prepared, but getting to do that for the first time in that video in real time was really fun. The vacuum wipers, all those things were really, really fun. So that's the oldest car I've driven. I've ridden in a 54 Mercury. I think that's probably the oldest thing I've ridden in. Yeah, I don't think I've ever done anything older than that. I'd still love to drive all kinds of old cars someday. And again, I'm just waiting. I'm biding my time for all the, typically old classic car fans to age out. And then I can scoop up, hopefully, especially the 1940s and 1950s stuff that I love. There's hardly any appreciation for those these days beyond, again, that generation. So I'm hoping someday I'll be able to have a big warehouse full of all of my favorite 1940s and 1950s classics that, that I can pick up for pennies on the dollar. We'll see. Let me see. Darnell says Matt will never be bored. He's a car guy at heart. Yeah, I hope that is the case, because I do really love driving so much. And Stratus says, Matt, did you hear about / see the viral video of the Mach-E locking up on a freeway and hitting another car? Yes, I'm not sure if you saw the actual explanation as far as what happened there. I did post it on my Instagram story because I was annoyed at the amount of people that tried to profit and get all the clout off of that. That had nothing to do with the car. The California Highway Patrol, they ruled it a DUI. I mean, innocent until proven guilty, but the dude was out of his mind. And that is clearly visible in the video. The guy's like praying, like he's not trying to touch the steering wheel. He's not doing anything. And a Mach-E also, no matter what you do, if you are running against a wall like that, the car will stop unless you are floored, is my understanding. So the dude was floored while he's hands off the wheel, and the California Highway Patrol also confirmed that Blue Cruise was not on. So it was not Blue Cruise, was not the Mach-E's fault at all. It was just that I think there's an override there for full throttle. And maybe that's something Ford will then do a software update and say, even at full throttle, you can't do this. But I think it's a safety thing of like, okay, if you're full throttle, this car should be stopping and you're running into something clearly, but we're going to let you go because, we don't see a pedestrian in the way, or we don't see any other obstruction. And so, we're assuming that you're fleeing a zombie or something. I don't know, what the programming mentality is that went into letting the car continue to accelerate as it's driving into a wall, even if you are floored. But that's for, if you watch the video and then you see whenever it veers off and then, T-bones the Mirage, the wheels actually were kicking up dust. They were spinning so fast because he was accelerating. So that shows he was actively accelerating the whole time up until impact. And then finally, once he T-bones the Mirage, then the car shuts itself down because, airbags and all that stuff, then that forces it. No matter what you're doing, you're not getting any power. But that was, and apparently someone who had witnessed the accident went over to the driver of the Mach-E, like after, to check on him and say, are you okay? And apparently the guy was super out of it and had super dilated pupils. And, so I think he must have been tripping hard on shrooms, or I have no clue what happened, but clearly he was, capable enough of getting behind the wheel and getting down the highway. But then that was not the car's fault. So, and I hope that, it just sucks. This is one of these things. It's like a PR company's worst nightmare, because it's like you get all this crap and all this bad publicity for something that is not your fault whatsoever. And it's unfortunate, but yeah, that was just a crazy person being crazy. Maybe they were having an actual mental breakdown and were having a medical emergency or something. I mean, I'm not going to judge, but the person was making no attempts to stop the vehicle. I could rattle off for 10 minutes about all the things you could have done to stop that before it got to the T-boning situation there with the Mirage. Even if the car had locked up and the accelerator was pinned to the floor, because the car had been possessed and was the re-embodiment of Christine, for anyone who's watched that movie. Even if that's what has happened, is it is Christine come to life, even then there's other things you could do. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's just unfortunate for the Mirage driver. It sounds like the driver of the Mirage had some minor injuries, but I think they're actually okay, which also that person got very lucky, because a 5,000+ pound Mach-E going full throttle into the side of a Mirage normally would not be a good day for that Mirage driver. So they had some very good luck there for them as well. And I'm happy that, it could have been a lot worse. I'm happy it wasn't. But yeah, that was not what it appeared to be. If people were just thinking it was the car going crazy and holding the guy hostage or something, it was nothing like that. But yeah, that was definitely crazy to see. And let me see. I appreciate all the other super chats here. Apologies, Jordan, that I kept yours waiting here. He says, are car companies climate change deniers? Are they considering climate with the new EV battery investments? So, car companies, and this is kind of hard to speak in generalities because not all car companies are the same. But at the end of the day, these are publicly traded companies, and all they care about is shareholder value. That is at the core. I mean, they're a business. They are in business to make money. And as crappy as greedy capitalism is, whenever it's exploited to this heinous amount, and it's just, capitalism gone too far, in my opinion. But that's, that is the bottom line. Is it's just what is going to give us the best return on our investments? What is going to make, the board happy? And also, obviously, what is going to make the customer happy? Because, without customers, you don't have the sales and you don't have, the money coming in. So it's this tightrope walk that they have to do. And unfortunately, in my opinion, right now, they have the luxury of not having to worry about blowback. I think people are paying attention, and people will remember whenever these companies pivot in a few years, no one's going to believe any kind of green BS that comes out of their mouth, because the companies that really cared have shown their true colors already, and will continue to do that here for the next few years. And, also there's some component of this that, also is out of their control. Because again, like I've said many times before, there is a long product cycle. You cannot engineer a car for a president. You can't engineer a car for, a certain administration or what you think is going to happen. You have to think long term. You think beyond 4 years. You think, they're working right now on stuff for the 2030s. That's the stuff they're conceptualizing. They're talking about, look at Corvette. We have all these new Corvette concepts. None of those are coming in the next year or two. This is all, they're putting out feelers for everyone for the next, generation in 5 or 10 years, or maybe even the generation after that. I mean, they're thinking way far ahead. This Cadillac Velocity elevated thing or whatever that was at Monterey, I was on the call for that when they were giving us the info about it, before the reveal. And, someone asked, is this something we can expect from Cadillac? And obviously they're not going to come out and say, like, we're going to do this, but like they were saying, we're going to see what the reaction is. And, we're thinking this could be a way that Cadillac goes far off in the future. Obviously they know that right now, with EV sales having this very big hurdle, like that's not something that would make sense to launch in the next 3 years, but they are planning for what's beyond Trump, what's beyond 2029 and all this stuff. And, where do we see things going, regardless of who ends up being the next president? And where do we just anticipate customer demand being, in the 2030s? And they think, their EVs are doing really well at Cadillac, and so therefore, hey, maybe we should do some off-roady ones and combine this, as they see again this far off trend slowly approaching of luxury off-road EVs. Again, Genesis also doing a concept here in New York, same deal, and more others kind of going into that. Like that could be something on the horizon. Cadillac wants to get on it early. But so the whole point of that ramble is that they're looking long term, and so that's why you're seeing, for example, Toyota. Probably, if they would have known things would have gone exactly the way things have gone, would they have been launching several new EVs here this year? Probably not. They know the timing's probably not going to be the best, but it's also something that they do believe in. They do think that EVs are a good component of their product makeup, in addition to all the other electrified options and non-electrified stuff that they offer too. But that the Cadillac, all the Toyota stuff that's been coming out here this year, like that is a prime example that like clearly they cannot time this stuff to the year or to the administration, because this stuff takes years and years, and those were all conceived in 2022 when everyone was paying $5,000 over a sticker for every EV, and they're like, oh boy, well let's wind up all the EVs, and then it takes all these years, and then here we are now, just 3 years later, not even a big time jump, but 3 years later, and now people are getting them for $150 a month and all this, and so there's it's very hard to do that, and so that's why you can't read too much into what is launching in the next 3 years here from car companies, because one, they planned it before they knew the election results, and two, there's only so much pivoting you can do, and again, they know that it's unwise to put all your eggs in one basket, because again, the winds of culture and the winds of the political landscape blow a different direction all the time, and so I think that car companies are going to hold to their climate goals. Now, some will wiggle and they will respond, but they're responding still to the customers for the most part. I think Dodge and Ram is the one exception where they're still going to have the EV truck, but that's been delayed. They're still going to have the Ram Charger plug-in hybrid thing, and I think that's still an excellent idea that still will have some demand. But that has still been kind of put on the back burner a little bit. And I think there's they can see, okay, well, we can hurry up and shove a V8 in every Ram we can make, and we're going to cash in. That shows me that those types of things obviously again are about making the most amount of money possible. Stellantis could use it these days, especially with the struggles they've had recently. So there is other justifications for that without immediately going to tar and feathering them for being climate change deniers or something. But it also does suck, because they could have just stuck to their guns and said, this is our conviction, we're sticking with it, and they caved. They caved to the pressure, and I know most of the car world has the polar opposite opinion of me. My opinion is very unpopular, but it's a shame that they didn't stick to their guns, because the Hurricane 6-cylinder is a better truck motor than the V8. It's more powerful. It's just better in every single way. Like, no debate. It's better in every single way aside from sound. But and it's the same thing with Charger EV. I still stand behind Charger EV is the best way to do a fast drag car. That is the best way to do it. Perfect launches, instant response, instant torque, right off the line. But instead of sticking to those convictions, we're going to probably see a V8 Charger here that's going to be slower in every single way, even slower than the Hurricane version probably, but it's going to be what people want. And, again, it shows you that when you take away all the guardrails for a company and you say, okay, let's have no rules for the next 3 years. Let's try that. Again, I'm going to be taking notes, and I'm going to remember, the companies that held to their stuff and actually still stuck to what they said about the climate and what they actually, said they cared about, and the companies that don't stick to that, I'll remember and I won't forget. And you know, I'm going to give them crap for it once they decide to pretend like they care about the environment again in the future. But you know, I think a lot of companies do stick. They've stuck to that. You know, they haven't changed. You know, I mean, Ford's still talking about this new EV platform that they're going to be rolling out here, and we see GM has said they're not changing. GM's not doing anything different. The Cadillac EVs are doing fantastically well for them. Equinox EVs doing fantastically well. There's some great products, and they're not changing. They're, you know, they're not going to go and drop a V8 in an Equinox EV. They could, I mean, you know, probably wouldn't fit, but you know what I mean? Like they can do these things if they wanted to, and they're not. So, you know, like right now, I think that GM actually maybe I'm more inclined to believe what they're saying about climate stuff than what Stellantis has said. Now, you know, Stellantis, I think they still do care to some degree because they still do have the electrified stuff. And I think that they are trying to take a Toyota type of approach of having a multi-prong, you know, option for everybody, which I'm in support of. You know, I think some people, it just doesn't make sense to have an EV. It doesn't make sense to have a plug-in hybrid. You got to meet people where they are. And so, you know, but I think that they can still do more. And yeah, it is what it is. But yeah, I was probably one of the only people that wasn't excited about the Ram V8 comeback. Just to me, just seemed like a complete, just like no backbone move of like, okay, you're grabbing the cash and burning it, you know, along the way. And it's just, yeah, didn't sit well with me, but I know I'm like probably one of 5 enthusiasts that feels that way. YH, thank you for the super chat. He says, who prays like a cartoon character instead of trying to take control of their car? He was looking for a paycheck. Mustang fans, not in our name. I mean, maybe he was looking for a paycheck. The thing is, though, cars record so much data that there's no way to fake that. Like, there's no way to pretend the car had become possessed, because they see your accelerator data, they see your brake data, they see your steering data, they record every single moment. There's a black box in every car that, you know, is analyzed after a crash, and the insurance companies aren't going to be bamboozled with that either. I mean, that's insurance fraud in addition to being, you know, trying to you know, screw over the car companies. You know, that stuff doesn't work. I mean, maybe idiots think it does, but like, you know, you cannot, you know, people try and then they get caught and thrown in jail for insurance fraud. You know, like you can't fake that stuff. You know, and these aren't the days of like, oh no, I spilled my McDonald's coffee on my lap, give me $1 million. You know, like, I mean, things are different, I think, in that world. So I just, to me, I don't think it was even that. I think the guy clearly was out of his mind. And you know, and I think that's why he was praying like a cartoon character, because I think he was probably envisioning, I don't know, you know, some cartoon god or something in front of him, you know, driving his car or something. I don't know. Maybe he truly took Jesus Take the Wheel to heart or something. I have no clue. I don't know. Something was off of that dude for sure. Thank you for the super chat there, Itch. And Jordan, thank you for another super chat. He says, OTA updates distribution from Ford headquarters, or is that a data factory? Where are car OTA updates sent from? I'm not sure like where they originate from, but I mean, they are developed by the engineering teams. And so therefore, like for Ford, it would go through Dearborn. That's, you know, the head office there. Now, you know, I don't know if there's some other person remotely who's, you know, pressing enter, you know, somewhere else, but you know, that all that kind of stuff, it happens on a corporate level, and gets all the approval and all the validation and all that before it, you know, gets sent out there. But I'm not sure as far as, yeah, exactly where they send those kind of signals from, honestly. And YH says Ford OTAs come from Hogwarts. Possible. And let me see. Getting back to the other questions here. So where were we here? So let me see. I see Darnell says, Matt, if the YouTube stuff fades in a few years, I think you have the skills for corporate video editing / training or leadership videos. I appreciate that. I just hate editing. Like, that's the one part of this job that I really, really would not miss if I quit. So it would be so nice to never have to edit another video again. Especially, you know, if I was editing someone else's stuff, maybe that'd be a little bit better. But I think I'd also be equally frustrated with that. It's hard to edit yourself because, you know, you're seeing your own screw ups and stuff. Seeing someone else's screw ups would be a little bit better, but I think that I've improved my delivery, so I've made it easier for myself in post production, with the editing part of it. So I think, if I had to edit someone who, had no clue how to present well or something, and I'm having to sit there and chop stuff together, it'd be kind of annoying. But yeah, I mean, I hope that, I would be able to do something in the car world if YouTube didn't work out, instead of, doing something like I said, car courier or something like that. I mean, I'd like to do something at an executive kind of level, or, something where I can make some kind of difference in the car world. That could be kind of fun. But the problem is it's really hard to leave Pittsburgh with all of our attachments here. And most of these jobs aren't remote. Some of them are, but mostly just the PR kind of stuff. And even some of those, you have to still be hybrid or be in the office most of the time. So it's kind of tough as far as, what would be the next best path for me. So we'll see what happens, though. Again, I think, the past few weeks have actually been pretty good with YouTube views. Now, unfortunately, the ad rates still suck because of the market uncertainty. So I'm still hurting bad compared to what I was making even last year, which wasn't phenomenal either. But I'm getting by, and I'm hoping to at least last until the end of this year. We'll see again if some of the other stuff, like the consulting stuff and the other things, kind of help to make everything okay, or hopefully the ad rates recover at some point. We'll see what happens, but yeah, it's just, YouTube, you never know. I mean, with AI and stuff, YouTube could just start generating car reviews on their own, pretty soon. So I mean, I don't know. I've always approached this as a fun ride, and we'll see, when it ends up, ending, if it does end. I don't know. We'll see. But that's why I'm trying to diversify out, trying to do the consulting stuff, trying to do every little other thing that I can to try and not be 100% dependent on YouTube revenue, because it's definitely a roller coaster. And let me see. Danny says, my mom told me the car that she loved when she was a kid was her parents' Ford Granada. That's fun. She said her whole family loved that car, but I don't know what car replaced that. That's awesome, though. And YH says, New Jersey and New York City get like a few snowy days per year. Right. That's what I kind of figured. Just get an AMG G-Wagon. Yeah, I mean, wouldn't hurt, especially that's another great tax write-off, right? So many people have them just because they say, oh, this is my work equipment or whatever. But let me see. Danny's also saying, I just got a car with decent all-wheel drive system or front-wheel drive. Yeah, with no tires or chains, and you're fine. Yep. And I see B. Mitchell says, as far as in Ford's product line, nothing really replaced the Granada, nor did it replace anything previous. My mom also had a Granada, a 76 coupe with the sport package, a 302 V8, and a C4 auto. It scooted pretty good. I bet. That sounds fun. And Danny says, if you get good all seasons, you can run those through snowstorms. We did all seasons on our 06 Equinox, and it was fine. Being front wheel drive and being through 7 New Jersey blizzards and being fine. Nice. Yeah, I mean, all seasons do a pretty decent job most of the time. I mean, they have their limits, so it just comes down to how much actual snow you're encountering, and how often you encounter that kind of snow. But yeah, I mean, all seasons have come a long way for sure too. But I know a lot of people, especially around here, everyone buys a Subaru because you have to have a Subaru if you're ever seeing snow in every Pittsburgher's mind. They buy a Subaru with all season tires, and it's as certain as taxes and death that every first snow of the year in Pittsburgh, you inevitably see at least 1 or 2 Subarus in a ditch that were overconfident, that thought that because they bought a Subaru, they now have a tank that is impervious to snow, and they learn a hard physics lesson. And it always happens. It's always a Subaru. Always. It's so funny how every single year multiple people, they find that out because marketing is a hell of a drug. And some people buy the old Subaru, marketing that was really heavy, at least around here, that, you had just excellent traction, in every stock Subaru, and that was all you needed. That's not really true. See why it says he's halfway into his Canadian whiskey. Nice. Well, yeah, I need to buy some more Canadian whiskey to support those of you in Canada that are getting screwed over royally right now. So I need to go buy some more Canadian Club. And I actually just saw too wine. Like there's almost no American wine imports into Canada anymore. So like that's hurting the wine industry as well. And it's crazy. So I feel for all of you in Canada who can't get any good Napa Valley wine or anything like that anymore. That's gotta suck. And let me see. So Dave says, money, no object. Would you take a GT500 over your Bullet? No, I wouldn't. Because to me, a GT500 is amazing. But I personally don't want that much power in a car that I'm driving on the street trying to have fun on the street with. Now, if I, had the luxury of multiple cars and, I could have a GT500 for a track toy, it'd be fun. Probably wouldn't be my first track choice either. But, in a setting like that, I see GT500 making sense and I would enjoy it. And I would certainly, if you're doing track driving, GT500 all the way over Bullet, no question there. But on the streets, that's why I love the Bullet. It was really a perfect power level. It had a nice high red line. And I mean, the gearing was a little taller than I would have liked. So second gear, you were going pretty quick by the top of second. But, it was just still slow enough to have fun and be able to really ring it out without being a complete menace to society. And GT500, it's just, anything that much power in anything you can't have fun with because you get to put your foot into it for 2 seconds and then you got to slow down if you value your license at all, and I don't love that kind of a driving experience. It's fun. It's a fun one-trick pony. And I get that in the EVs. The Lyric's got 500 horsepower. If I want to, take off like a bat out of hell, I can put my foot down and it's great. But I don't choose that for a fun daily driver for myself. I just, and I've always kind of had the idea of, driving a slow car fast is more exciting than a fast car slow. And so I still hold to that. I mean, not like Bullet was a slow car, but, I think about 500 horsepower is kind of the limit. Once you're over that, I mean, even some stuff with 500 horsepower, depending on how much it weighs and how it's geared and stuff, could even be too much. But, that's why every time I'm in a Miata, I'm singing its praises, until I run out of breath, because it's just like the greatest amount of fun you can possibly have. You have this fun, light little thing. You can ring the hell out of it, and it's so much fun, but it's, and it's affordable. I mean, just so many good things about it. But I mean, I think really, yeah, for any daily driver, I don't want more than 500 horsepower. And that's kind of actually one of the drawbacks with Ioniq 5N. I love how it handles it. I love the personality, but even that, it's so fast. Thankfully, the gearing in that car slows it down when you're doing the manual shifting. It's not quite as fast as it is whenever it's just direct drive EV. So I think that's the only redeeming quality, is that does help to slow it down a little bit, so you can actually enjoy the process a little more. But yeah, it's I think to me, I can understand the appeal for everyone that loves insanely high horsepower stuff, but for me, I'd stay under 500 horsepower for the street. And I see YH says the Ioniqs are better built than Teslas. If I ever go EV, which is never, I would get the Ioniq. Yeah, I agree with you that it's much better built than Teslas. I think Tesla's improved the build quality, some. But I agree that the Hyundai is going to be a lot better for sure with that. And Danny says that the Granada rode like a cloud and it was almost fully loaded for that car. That's awesome. And CYH has the same sentiment there about the car companies. And Danny says someone in Europe has over 2 million kilometers on their Gen 1 Model S, and it has gone through 4 electric motors over its lifetime. Crazy. 1.9 million kilometers, so 1.18 million miles. That's crazy. And I see YH says, yeah, someone else reached 1.2 million kilometers on their Toyota Tercel. That's true. Yeah, but I mean, the Teslas, even if build quality isn't the best from a fit and finish standpoint, which I think is the main complaints, is, bumpers and panel gaps and things like that. But mechanically, they are very solid cars. This is why you see tons of Uber drivers, running around in them and stuff. Because they do hold up very well. I mean, battery replacements seem to be fairly rare, under 300,000 miles. And even beyond that, a lot of people are still fine. Yeah, Teslas are really well engineered. It's just, again, everything around the motors and the batteries is the stuff that, to me, I think is still not ideal. But let me see here. So see, yeah, I was talking about impounded and seized. And Jordan says a salesman at Racine County car dealership is under fire after a recent TikTok he posted went viral. He's bragging about selling a Honda for over 10 grand to a single mom. Jeez, yeah, that's man. The stories like that make me so anxious for the days when dealers are no more. It's gonna happen because I mean, we all saw it during the pandemic, and as we've seen, dealers continue to be crappy. Obviously, not every dealer is, not every salesman is, but yeah, that kind of stuff boils my blood. I hate seeing stuff like that, especially like markups in general are pretty heinous in my opinion, no matter how you slice it. And then to do it to someone is like a single mom, like that's truly evil. Like no soul, no ounce of empathy or compassion whatsoever. Like that should be illegal. Like, and then some. I mean, like, like that's so ugly. It's just insane. I hope that someone set up like a GoFundMe for the single mom or something to get back her 10 grand, or hopefully she sues the guy or something. I don't know. I mean, just like oh man, I hate that stuff. That's the kind of stuff that would bring out the angry Matt Moran in me really quick. If man, I would so badly want to defend someone like that from evil people like that. That's just there's no other word you can use but evil. It's just straight up evil. And let me see. Danny says this one Model S had been through 4 battery packs and 14 electric motors over the 1.18 million miles. That's crazy. Because honestly, like that's really bad. Most of them, they're not that much. They're not going through that kind of stuff too often. That's kind of crazy. Let me see. Lancelot, thanks so much for stopping by and for the very generous super chat. He says, good evening, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. Hope you're doing well too, Lancelot. And yeah, thanks for stopping by. I appreciate it. Let me see here. Also, MD Chaz says the big three have abandoned the average U.S. buyer. Bring the Chinese cars now. Yeah, I mean, I don't agree completely. I think, Ford's talking about this $30-something thousand EV truck. They have Maverick. Yes, it's 30 grand still. 30 is the new 20 as far as how things are priced just because of inflation in general. We've all seen that. There is some of those things where you can't expect there to still be plentiful amounts of $20,000 cars, because if you run the inflation calculator, I mean, we're talking about stuff that, the days of super cheap cars like that's been, I think, gone for a while now. And I think that, Chevy's working on a new Bolt because I think they care about affordability. They have the Equinox EV at 35 grand because I think they care about affordability. I think there is, still some of that. Now, could there be more? Absolutely. And I think that that's something, as much as I don't want us to go into some dark times economically here, I think it's inevitable to one degree or another. And I think, we could see a little resurgence in affordable cars, or at least stuff that is already in existence, maybe having a longer life, like Jetta, for example. I think Volkswagen understood like, hey, this is a nice low price tag. That's why it's selling really well. And instead of trying to make it some crazy, wild, impressive new thing with a giant screen, let's just, stick to what we do well and stick to some of the older stuff, give it a fresh face and call it a day and sell it at a nice affordable price tag. I think, we're seeing that. I'm hoping like Nissan Versa gets an extension on its life, but same thing. Altima, I hope they keep Altima around a little longer. There's been a rumor that Altima was supposed to go away in 2026, but because Nissan has since canceled their EV sedan, I think the Maxima or whatever, I believe the reports were that has been killed off. So I hope that Altima maybe gets a little more of a runway now, and a few others like that. They're just cheap and affordable, good cars that I think need to stick around. And I think if companies play their cards right, and we do go into some kind of recession or something like that, I think that that's going to be very advantageous for them to say, look, we got these right on the lot now. You need a car. Here we can still sell you something for $25,000 to $30,000, for people who absolutely need to buy. So I think, I'm hoping that there's going to be more affordable stuff, but I think, some companies certainly do it better than others. And I do get mad still, like, Subaru getting rid of the base trim for their models is annoying, so there's some of those things where I think car companies are going in the wrong direction and have abandoned, the average buyer in some ways. But I don't think that's everyone necessarily. I see Darnell says, I think the U.S. administration will eventually allow BYD technology as a wholesaler to the big three. That's also another interesting way to do it. You're right. I heard someone else float that idea before, especially like with Ford, since they're so impressed with, the Chinese tech. It could very well end up being that way. And I mean, that's what we already see in China. You look at all of the Western brands in China, they've all just, I mean, partially because the government has kind of forced them to. You have to like have a partnership with a Chinese brand in order to be able to sell, in many ways there. But I think that's kind of what another future look at what we will probably see here, just kind of reversed. Instead of the Western companies needing to get into the Chinese market, so they have like, the Mazda EZ6 is like their new sedan, but it's a Chinese car underneath. And, but they're able to say, hey, look, we are selling a new Mazda, but it has the competitive tech, that everyone in China expects and all that. I think that's a very smart way to play it, is badge engineer it. Unfortunately, it is the best approach. And I think you could see that same thing of like, okay, we also want to compete here in America. How do we do that? Well, same deal. We can't do it on our own if we're like Mazda, maybe, for example. So let's just buy the Chinese tech and bring that over. Now, you're still going to have to pay tariffs, at least for now, on the parts that you bring in from China. So that's a little tricky. Maybe you can just buy the patent and then manufacture some of that stuff here, if you have, again, the available production capacity already. But yeah, I think that could be a better way to do it as well. And I just don't know if BYD would be okay with that, because that's their best tech. And I don't know if they're going to settle for just parts. I think they understand that, like, if they do play their cards right, I mean, they could have the whole ball game, and they could, find a way in and sell their actual products, do it their way, and not have to compromise. But if it seems like they are just going to give up, or they can't fight it or something, then maybe they will do the supplier route. But I think that would honestly do a disservice to their engineering, because getting that stuff put in a new Ford, for example, and then having Ford, trot out, look, our sweet thing that charges at 1 megawatt. And it's like, well, that's because it's a, battery from China. And look, it's got 1,050 horsepower. That's because that's the electric motor from the thing you bought it from off in China or whatever. I mean, like, I don't know how that would sit with those companies, especially because I think like BYD is partially owned by the Chinese government. So, I think we'd have to have much better relations between China and America before you would ever see China give up that component of it. But maybe they would, if they really want to just up the volume of the battery packs, up the volume of the motor output and stuff, then maybe they would be okay doing that. But I feel like they might not be cool with that, possibly. I don't know, we'll see. It's a good idea, though, I think, if they were up for it, for sure. And JG, thanks for stopping by. And Vishal says, did you see the news that Acura will be bringing hybrids? It's about damn time they have. I hadn't actually seen that, so I'm not sure. Did they say? Yeah, because I hadn't heard that, so I have lots of questions now. But I know, for example, that they're working on a hybrid powertrain for the next generation Pilot, it sounds like, and that would go into the MDX as well. So, that's one that, I think we kind of already assumed was going to be coming eventually. But if they're doing more like Integra hybrid, ADX hybrid, if that's the kind of stuff you're talking about, then, well, it's about damn time. You're right. And hopefully they do that sooner rather than later, but I hadn't heard that. I'll have to look into that. Thanks for the heads up, Vishal. And let me see. He says, I made that iPhone mic movement thing up. Sorry, I'm inebriated on some whiskey, on some A whiskey. Nice. Okay, well, then never mind. But I'll still try and get to the bottom of that because it does seem kind of weird that it crackles sometimes. And Wheatman says, I saw a few of Matt's Aston Martins driving on 17 Mile Road near Pebble Beach. The girl stands out on those cars. Nice. Yeah, man. Those Astons, I love the new style on them. It's so sweet, and yeah, it's awesome. You got to see him out there running around Pebble Beach. You must have had some real fun car spotting here this week, Wheat Man. That's awesome. I see Danny said the mic was crackling again there. Hopefully it's okay again. And again, apologies for the subpar quality tonight here on the audio. And Jordan, thank you so much for another super chat. He says, Explorer EV, beautiful, similar to Maverick Lobo. So I'm not sure the question there. So I know that, an Explorer EV is in the UK and other parts of Europe using the Volkswagen ID4 platform. And as far as the looks there, I mean, they look pretty different in my mind, unless there's something else that you're referring to. I'm not sure. But the Explorer EV is an interesting thing that it has the ID4 underpinnings. And it sounds like those EVs, I think, are starting to do a little better for Ford. I think the Explorer's starting to do a little better for them, but both of them seem like they're not great successes. Ford has been claiming they are good successes, but like the Capri, which is also ID4 based, that over there, I think, I can't remember if they said they sold like 6,000 units so far this year or something terrible like that. But it doesn't seem like it's doing very well. But I think the Explorer EV looks pretty good to me. And I think that the Explorer we have here is also a very nice looking vehicle too. And thank you again for the super chat, and let me know if you have any follow up there on that. But yeah, Ford, they kind of play it safe, I think, though, with styling some days. I mean, Maverick's fine, but I think they could have done a little more to make it more exciting for the refresh year than they did. But again, it's selling fine, so I don't think they need any pressure to do anything crazy with it. Let me see. So Fuchs says, what's interesting to me is the Civic Sports go back to the NA 2.0 from the old 1.5T. I'm not sure if it's exactly the same engine as before. They go turbo, but interesting decision. Yeah, the NA 2.0, I think it's just, it's one of those old standby motors. They've just, kept going because it's just cheaper, obviously, to put in the turbo. But yeah, I'm not sure if they're going to keep that up forever or what. But I think there's a case to be made for, again, not having turbo power for one, the Honda traditionalists that just want a naturally aspirated motor, and also for the people that just don't need the power. Not everyone needs that turbo punch, and some people are completely happy with what the naturally aspirated motor does. So, yeah, I think that makes sense. But I know what you mean from a marketing standpoint, that the sport trim is the slower, motor there. It is a little odd for sure. But I think it's, again, just all about the look, obviously. And for some people that's enough, and that's okay, So Mike says, Matt, what are your thoughts on car owners to still decide to interact with their phones while having modern infotainment / big screens right next to it? Yeah, when people make that choice, it's odd. I mean, even like today, I saw someone driving with their hand up, or it was yesterday, I saw someone driving with their hand up, holding the phone up still. And I'm like, okay, so you're also not using Bluetooth. I mean, sometimes, you want to take a call privately, if you have other people in the car or something, okay, I can understand it in that, circumstance. But if you're like all the time holding your phone up, like, one, why do you want to do that anymore? And two, like, you have Bluetooth at the very least. And then you have, the better interactions with the car and everything. It's, and here in PA, actually, they just made it a law a couple of months ago now that you are not allowed to use a handheld device. And you can actually get ticketed for it if they see you with your phone in your hand. So, now you actually have to use Bluetooth here in PA if you don't want to get a ticket. But yeah, it is kind of strange. I mean, there are still certain things, obviously, you can do on your phone that you can't do with CarPlay or Android Auto, or your car is built in infotainment software. So there is some of those things, but I would argue that those things are things you shouldn't be doing in the car while you're driving. All the people that are watching YouTube or, flipping through TikToks or whatever, Instagram. I mean, I've seen it all, and I think it also is a symptom of a couple of things. I think, and this may be devil's advocate, because I think there is a reason for speed limits, and it's a good reason. But I think that cars have gotten so capable. Every car is so much faster than 20 or 30 years ago, and it's easier than ever to drive a car, in my opinion. And so I think that a lot of people are just straight up bored. It's not a challenge like it used to be a challenge. And I think that, same thing, especially on the highway. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but even, the highest speed limits we have around here are 70 miles an hour on the turnpike in PA. And, even at 70, I mean, it's at least a little bit more stimulating of a drive, but like, man, like, especially some parts, like in West Virginia, you can go 70, and then I'm driving from West Virginia into PA, and then I got to go from 70 to 55. It's like I'm crawling. I mean, I don't go down to 55, technically, but you have to slow down so much, and it is boring a lot of times. I mean, that's not an excuse, but like, from a non-car person who doesn't have that component that feels bad about it or feels like they're doing something wrong. Like, I mean, obviously, distracted driving does lead to a lot of accidents. So clearly people aren't that good at multitasking. But I think that, on highways, if you had higher speed limits, I think you would have people less tempted to pull out their phones. If you had people able to drive faster, or you just make cars slower, which I know none of us would like to see happen, but like, one or the other, where you have some kind of extra challenge as far as driver engagement, that would cause you to be less inclined, I think, to pick that up and, mess with it. And I think this is why we're seeing this. I actually just saw, I think even like the mainstream media started to slowly kind of pick up on this. Maybe it was a slow news day, I don't know, but I saw, I don't know, it was ABC or somebody was doing a headline that Gen Z is now more into manuals than prior generations were, and there's this real resurgence of manual interest, primarily on the used market, I think. But there's a lot of that, and I know a lot of parents have said they're very excited and they support their kid winning a manual transmission, because that means they can't be playing with their phone, and it's really the perfect solution, and the kid enjoys the manual experience better, and they're also a better driver, in my opinion, because they're more engaged with what's going on. They have to make sure their clutch is doing the right thing and they're shifting in the right gear, and it's just better all around, in my opinion. I highly recommend manual for anyone, for their kid or for whatever. I think it's just a more engaging drive. But I think that'll hopefully stick with those Gen Zers, and hopefully there'll be a lifelong love of manuals that will hopefully allow them to be less distracted than all of us older generations maybe behind the wheel. And I hope that trend continues, and that they are the ones that lead us in the right direction, strangely enough. But it's definitely annoying. I mean, yeah, lots of judgment when I see people flipping through Instagram at a red light or something like that. I mean, if you're in a real heavy traffic jam and you're not moving or something, it is what it is. But like, whenever I see people trying to multitask poorly, it's definitely not great, because it does lead to a lot of accidents, and it's dangerous. Let me see here. Queasy, thanks for stopping by. He says, what's good? I think with the new Prelude coming back, there's a chance Honda will bring back the Civic or Accord coupes. He says, I have a 2016 Accord coupe, and I added the HFP kit recently, and I love it. That's awesome. I don't think we will see another coupe. I think the fact we're getting any coupes at all is a surprise, and probably a bad business decision. We will see. But I think Prelude is the only one we'll get. I think we'll also probably have an Acura version. That makes sense. And we'll probably get a Type R version too. But I think Prelude is going to be it for Honda, especially when you're talking about Accord. I'm honestly amazed Accord Coupe lasted as long as it did, because that segment is just non-existent. And maybe Honda could be the one to bring it back, but I think we'd have to see a lot more coupe interest in the smaller segments before they would ever take the leap to the bigger segments. It's just not what people, for the most part, want these days. I think the Prelude, there's a case to be made there for it, because obviously you're appealing to enthusiasts, and enthusiasts still like coupes and, buy them in somewhat decent numbers, I suppose. But, I don't think they're expecting anything more than GR86 sales numbers for Prelude. If it does more than that, I'd be shocked, especially with the rumored price tag of people are talking about it being 40 grand and more. If that's the case, I mean, I don't know if they're even going to sell that much, but, I don't think it's going to be a high volume car. And I think because of the low volume, it's going to be a one-off kind of thing that they're going to do in limited numbers. I don't see it being a success. And then it'll probably, because I mean, the reason why we lost Civic Coupe was because they said people weren't buying enough coupes. And then a few years later, they're bringing out a new coupe with Prelude. And I think that they're hoping having it be different in styling and having a nostalgic name is going to make it, I guess, a better seller than Civic Coupe. But that's a big stretch, and I don't even think that, I think they were right that people weren't buying coupes, and they were right to get rid of the Civic Coupe. As sad as it was to see, I don't want to see coupes go away. I'm, a kid of the 90s, and I remember all the sport compacts, and that was, what I grew up on, the Fast and Furious stuff, I love sport compact coupes, and I wish that they did better, but it's just everyone's obsessed with, well, what if I need to move a mattress once in my life? I better buy a pickup truck. And that's the current trend is, well, I would like to pretend I'm going to go camping. And I may end up having to park in a grass parking lot for a festival. So I should probably get an SUV. I mean, that's truly, and I'm not even exaggerating. Legitimately, there's someone that I saw a Facebook post, like from a real person that Beth knows, who was like, I got a Tacoma because I may have to move in the next year, and it'd probably be a good idea. It's like, okay, so you're going to get bad fuel economy, bad driving dynamics, all these things you're willing to compromise on because you don't want to rent a U-Haul for a weekend, possibly at some point in the next year. But these are real people buying real cars. And so when you have that kind of mentality you're going up against, how are you going to get someone to get a coupe? It's really hard. And so that's this, it's just the world we're living in, there's just not a lot of space for those kinds of cars. And so that's why I don't think we'll ever see that kind of stuff. And again, if Prelude lasts more than 3 to 5 years, I'd be surprised. If we get a second gen Prelude, I'd be extra surprised. I hope I'm wrong. I desperately want to be wrong on that, but I don't see Prelude being a success, especially at the price tags that have been rumored. But we'll see. And Nicholas says, a few months ago, I was behind this truck on a curved on-ramp, and he was just straight off the road and then tried to get back on right next to me and rammed into a steel barrier and sent debris flying. It was so crazy. I called Highway Patrol to check on them. I have no idea what they were thinking. Geez, well, I'm glad that the barrier actually held them up, because typically for trucks, they go right through them. That's the kind of the problem with a lot of these barriers with heavy vehicles, especially with EVs. It's like a lot of EVs just blow right through those guardrails. Large trucks, same problem. Those guardrails were engineered in the 80s for, Pintos and little hatchbacks, second gen Civics and stuff, and not so much for the modern vehicles. So I'm glad it actually held up, because that could have been a whole lot worse, obviously. But I'm glad you're okay, Nicholas, and hopefully no debris hit you. But that's wild. I'm sure it was crazy to see. And let me see. Darnell says all the car companies have corporate video teams too. That's true. Yeah, maybe there's something there. Yeah, just doing some video production for them. I know. With car companies, they have product presenters that, sometimes will either do in-person presentations, but a lot of times they've been doing video ones as well for us, where they, have a little, 5-minute kind of walk around of the car and things like that. And some of them, they're pulling people internally, but they're not, obviously, if these were, top-notch presenters, they would be doing, presenting full-time, and they're not, but it is what it is. But, that's something I've always thought, like, I could do possibly for a car company, is just be like the product person on a press launch who, can rattle off all the specs. Because, I can't tell you guys how many times I'm talking to the lead subject matter expert on a vehicle, and I say, what's the curb weight? I don't know. Or like the chief engineer. I can count on multiple hands how many times I've asked the chief engineer of a vehicle on the product launch, where they are trained to answer journalist questions. I say, what's the curb weight? What's the 0 to 60? No idea. I have to check with you. I gotta, and it's, so I think there's a lot of room for improvement, and I would be happy to contribute my services someday if I can't do YouTube. something like that where I could show up at these events and actually know what I'm talking about and be able to have all that info right there to quote off for people, or even, for car shows. I mean, you go to car shows and they hire, these random people, or they bring in some dealership person who, can read the window sticker and that's about it, and it's like, there's opportunities there to have better presentation. So, maybe something like that someday. I mean, I'm not the best presenter. I talk a mile a minute and I use a lot of filler words. So I have a lot of improvement that I can do as well. But that's just the one thing that I've noticed. I'm like, I feel like I could do this job better. But, so we'll see what happens. Again, all options are on the table. If anyone works at a car company, you want to shoot me an offer, let me know. Because at this point with the YouTube roller coaster, if a good offer came my way, I'd probably just go to doing these live streams, maybe doing, coverage of my own personal stuff and leave it at that. Because it's getting more and more crazy out there in the YouTube world, and with AI and everything else. I think moving into physical products is very important, because that's the one thing AI can't fake. And car companies, that's one good thing about them is, they're still going to have to manufacture transportation devices for people, no matter how good AI gets. You're going to have to still have wheels and a physical thing to move your body until we get to a point of teleportation or something someday. So I think that is why, going to a car company, I think would be a pretty safe bet to future-proof myself if I need to make a jump in the career world at some point. And Darnell also says, someone has to chop up and upload the promos and help videos for the Mach-E's, how to remove Bronco roofs, etc. Yeah, I think something like that I'd definitely be up for doing. And Vishal says, back when we lived in Columbus, Ohio, I remember we were out while it was snowing and seeing a Subaru stuck in the snow while we drove past it in our two-wheel drive 2010 Highlander. Tires do matter. Absolutely. And I wish that was something that was more pushed, but obviously car companies aren't going to push that because they want everyone to think their car is super capable. And I mean, you can't blame them for wanting to, project that, but so many people just don't understand how important tires are, and also don't understand physics at all. I think even just people going and playing around in a parking lot, in a snowy parking lot, would teach so many people so much. And people have just never even bothered to do that. So they don't know what to do when their car starts sliding out of control. They don't know which way to steer. They don't know, how to do the throttle, what to do with the brakes, all that stuff. Once, I think that's the best thing I learned from all the driving schools that I've been to, is managing the physics and weight transfer. Weight transfer is so insanely important. And once you understand weight transfer, it's like riding a bike. Like, you never forget that. And I think your instincts just immediately get upgraded. I mean, you still can screw up, and plenty have done that. But, I think once you understand what to expect out of a car because of the physics involved and the weight transfer involved, you have a whole lot of a better chance of saving yourself in some kind of situation like that. And a lot of people they've never pushed their car to the limit. They've never figured out, what happens when, something like that happens. And I think that's why it's very, very important. I know whenever my daughter's old enough to drive, I'm going to do a snow driving course for her, do a high performance driving course with her. They teach you so many good things in addition to just like, oh no, I'm sliding, what do I do? I mean, like, I know the Cadillac, they had one of the best ones actually, the V Performance Driving Academy, because it was a 2-day program. And like, one of the exercises was they put a sun visor over the windshield. The entire windshield was covered, so you couldn't see anything. And they set up cones, and they were like, okay, use your peripherals, and you had to judge by the peripheral cones about what you were supposed to do next. And like, just driving with just your peripherals and being forced to, you had to keep looking ahead, being forced to look in your peripherals to try and figure out how you need to move the car and how to get around the course. Like, that kind of stuff's crazy, but that kind of stuff really opens your mind in a big way. And it's really, really cool. Highly recommend a higher performance driving school for anybody. It'll make you a better driver, even if you never want to go a mile per hour over the speed limit. It'll just make you an insanely better driver. Definitely the best money you can spend is education. Second is tires. Jack, thanks for stopping by with a whiskey glass there. And Darnell says bullet with Magnaride and active exhaust and rumbly exhaust sounds. That was magical for sure. I miss it. And Otto Dan says, "Yo, what's up, Maddie? I've been enjoying the relaxing POVs. P.S. The Albart is still ready for you to test anytime. I appreciate the offer. Definitely will let you know." And I'll have to check. So if you haven't sent me an email recently, maybe send me an update email. Just because a lot of stuff gets buried. I do have a running list of cars, but I don't recall all my list for some reason. So send me an email. Be fun to revisit someday because I do love the Albarts for sure. They're so much fun. Speaking of rumbly exhaust sounds. And I'm glad you're enjoying the POV videos as well. Thanks for watching them. It means a lot. And Stratus says, hope everyone's kids that started school this week went well. I was happy to be the 1% that didn't drop their kid off in a truck/SUV. I bet. Yeah, I know around here, everyone starts up here this week. Yeah, I hope everyone's got kids is off to a good start here, and always an exciting start to the year here with new classes and all that stuff. So I hope it's going well for your kid as well, Stratus. And Danny says, a funny story about New Jersey, the most sold SUV according to Google is the Nissan Rogue. Interesting, right? Yeah, that is interesting. Come to think of it, I do always see a lot of Nissan Rogues whenever I'm on the eastern side of PA and into New Jersey and New York there. But the Rogue is a very big seller still. But it's only behind RAV4 and CRV in the SUV segment. And even as far as regular car sales goes, it's definitely, I think it's in the top 10. They sell a lot of Rogues, which I'm actually impressed because Rogue is really one of the least competitive offerings in that segment, in my opinion. Interior is pretty nice, but man, that powertrain, that's 3-cylinder turbo, I just did not enjoy. It was so rough and just did not feel like it was very polished. And I have my doubts about its longevity, but we'll see what happens. And let me see. Vishal says the newest 3 and Y are huge improvements over the pre-refresh ones. Much more solid feeling interiors, and the doors feel more solid when shutting them. That's good. I'm glad they're improving them. That's good to hear. And I'm sure those who have upgraded, at least they're enjoying that component of the new 3 and Y, I guess. And that's good to hear. And Jordan, thank you so much for another super chat. Sorry I missed it till now too. He says, does Blue Cruise / Super Cruise adjust to speed limits? You can have it adjust to the speed limits and it can match that. I think that's an option. But otherwise, it just works like regular cruise control where you can just set it. But there's also even Hyundai's highway drive assist will also adapt itself to the speed limits if you select that. So you don't have to even have hands-free to do that. But a lot of those newer adaptive cruise systems do. And it's nice to have. The only problem with that functionality is that it gets confused by construction zones, because at least around here, construction zones are sometimes not always consistent with when they enforce the speed limits. Like around here, it's only the work zone speed limit if the lights are flashing, and same thing like school zone speed limits. Those cars can get kind of confused by that because they don't read the whole sign where it says 15 mile per hour speed limit between the hours of 8 to 10 on Monday through Friday and 3 to 4 or whatever. They don't know that. So, some of those things, obviously, whenever you're in a school zone, you're not, using cruise control typically. Although Blue Cruise or Super Cruise at least does work on some 2-lane roads now. So I guess feasibly you could actually do it in a school zone too. But, on the highway though, that's where, construction zones can kind of trip them up. And I also just don't love that much control over my speed from the car. So personally, I've never really used those systems, but yeah, that is something you can do. Let me see. Where are we here? Chad says, I watched a story about Slate. It said the reason for knobs for climate control was safety because you can keep your eyes on the road. It's crazy cars have so many screens, but cell phones are bad. Yeah, that is the other component. I know that's the other side of that argument is that, yes, is it any better poking around on your screen in your car versus the one on your phone? I argue it is. I think that's the important thing about CarPlay and Android Auto, especially, and also the car companies' built-in stuff, is that usually there's not a whole lot of options, especially when you're talking about CarPlay and Android Auto. Is they kind of limit how many things are on the screen. They're big icons, so it's a lot easier to do. And again, you're limited with the apps you have access to versus everything that's on your phone. So I think it is still a little bit better, even if it is, distracting and obviously still not ideal. And I agree with Slate, the knobs are, less distracting. And I think we've seen other car companies say, they're going to bring more knobs back and that they are starting to see this concern. I think the car company theory initially was that, yes, a screen that has all this functionality is going to be more distracting than buttons and knobs. But I think that their fallback is, well, yeah, but we have all this safety tech now. So, sure, you might be worse at staying in your lane because you're distracted by your screen, but the car will help you stay in your lane. So, it's all good. Same thing with automatic emergency braking. You take your pick. Every one of these automated systems is supposed to correct poor driving. And, so they're like, well, if more people are doing more poor driving, hopefully the tech is catching that and stopping that before it gets truly bad, stops you from crossing a road line, things like that. And some companies do that better than others, though. There are companies, though, where I can go straight over a line still. I mean, Hyundai is a prime example. Every time I'm using the adaptive cruise control and I have every lane keep assist system set to its most aggressive setting and I have everything amped up to steer this car for me, basically. There's still been multiple times where I'm like, hey, look, there's a gentle corner on the highway. Let's see what it does. It goes straight over the line. And I'm like, okay, this is clearly not safe still. And it's insane because so many others have so much praise for the Hyundai system, and for them, it works flawlessly. And I don't know if all these people live on arrow straight highways or what, but here in southwestern Pennsylvania with windy highways, just Hyundai and Kia and Genesis system still just cannot hold a road line. And I don't know why that is, but Mazda also does not hold a road line. They have said it's deliberate of their system not doing it well because they want to give the driver real priority, even if it means you're careening off the side of the road, I guess. But that's, a choice that at least Mazda has said that they have made. Hyundai, I don't think has, gone that far. I think they are trying, and just for some reason, again, they let you go over the road lines, which I think is definitely the number one thing you can't do. But yeah, so I'm happy that Slate has stuck with it. I hope the Slate does make it to market, and I wish them all the best because I think it'll still be a really cool thing to have as an option, especially again with the affordability crisis and everything. I think Slate is kind of perfect timing in a way. Obviously it'd be better, I guess, if it was running a V8 or something, but as far as EVs go, I think it's got one of the best chances out there. And let me see. Recyclops says, is the manual G86 a reliable car coming from Mustang EcoBoost? Yeah, if you're coming from an EcoBoost, I think G86 is going to be just as reliable. And depending on what generation EcoBoost you are in, because before 2018, it didn't have port and direct injection. It was just direct injected, and those you have to walnut blast the valves eventually because they just get gunked up. So if you have an old EcoBoost, I'd say it's actually more reliable. And even if you have a newer EcoBoost, I'd say it's equally reliable or still possibly even more reliable. I don't know how high of mileage anyone's gotten a G86 up to with the new motor. I do know that there was a bearing, I think, that would kind of let go in the first gen BRZ in 86 that some people had happen around 120 odd thousand miles, maybe a little bit more. But I don't think that was consistent with everybody. I don't know exactly how that happened or why it happened for some of the cars. But I don't know if that's something they fixed. I just don't know enough about the new motor as far as what has carried over. Obviously it's bigger displacement, but I just don't know which parts were re-engineered, which ones maybe kept the same specs and the same tolerances as before. But generally, yes. I mean, we're talking about a Toyota and Subaru engineered motor. Should be pretty good. I would have no worries about reliability in a G86, and I would happily own one if I could afford one. absolutely love them to death. They're great cars. And I think, yeah, if you're comfortable with Mustang EcoBoost level of reliability, GR86 will be completely fine. And Hyper Shadow says, Mike's still crackling a little bit. Sounds almost like it might be a cord, maybe. Yeah, my cord is all good. It's a new Apple cord and everything. So I'm not sure what the deal is with that. But apologies again for the sound quality here. Maybe someday I'll get it figured out. We'll see. He says it's not bothering me personally, so that's good. He says also that Acura RSX, I wish it were a hybrid and more nostalgic. Yeah, I just wish that was what they used for their version of the Prelude. That would have been great. And instead, who knows what they'll call that, if they call it anything at all. If they do that, maybe it'll just be Integra Coupe. I don't know. We'll see. But Yeti says, hey, Matt, just bought a 2020 WRX. Any things I should look out for mechanically? I'm not an expert on that motor either, unfortunately. So for any of the reliability kind of questions, I mean, I have a little bit of info, as far as just what I pick up from comment sections on my reviews and, the things that I happen to see online. But, your best bet for that kind of question is going to be, go to a subreddit, go to, a Facebook group for that car. Those types of things are where you're going to get the best answers from actual owners in the community and what they've dealt with. But that motor, again, that still is, again, in that FA family. So I think that also, I don't know if the turbo version is the same thing where you have, an issue once you get to over 6 figures mileage wise. I think they should be okay, but I haven't heard any horror stories about that generation motor. It's certainly better than the old EJs, so you're ahead there. But beyond that, I don't know any other specifics. Unfortunately, I wish I did. If anyone else has owned a 2020 or that generation WRX, feel free to chime in. Obviously, more than happy to hear anyone else's experiences, so I can also educate myself. But I wish I could help you more, Yeti. Apologies for that. And Auto Dan says everyone is worried about using cells. Y'all should have seen me flipping through CDs while driving in the 90s. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's always been distractions. People doing makeup, people eating hamburgers. I mean, there's all kinds of distractions still out there. But the CD thing, is fun. I remember, the big books and flipping. I always had like a smaller one. I didn't have like the big, binder size. But I had a 6-disc CD changer in the Legacy GT, and had all my burn CDs and mixtapes and all that stuff. It was fun. I was actually just thinking the other day how I miss CDs. I think it's because Taylor Swift said her new album's coming out on CD, and I'm like, I wonder how many people actually are going to buy it on CD and actually listen to it that way instead of just collecting it. But because really, I think like that's one thing WRX actually still offers, or they did up until last year. I don't know if they still do, but they actually offer a CD player option. It's in the center armrest, and you can have it in there, which is kind of fun. But I don't think there's any other car that I can think of. Maybe someone else might have another idea, but I don't think anything other than the Subarus actually offers a CD player anymore. But fun times. Oh man, nostalgia. And Chadwick says, I am 27 and learning manual this Thursday before buying the Elantra N. That's awesome. Well, congrats on the incoming Elantra N, and good on you for learning a manual. That's awesome. Hope you have a blast with it. And thanks for supporting the manual, supporting the cause there with the Elantra N too. Such a fun, fantastic car. And hope you have a blast with it. And manual also, especially in the Elantra N, that's going to be a really good car to learn on, I think. Or maybe you're learning beforehand, but it's going to be an easy car to get better at manual with, I think, because you have the auto rev match downshifts. So that takes, some of the challenge out of that. And it's also just a nice, easy to use shifter, nice light clutch. So you're not fighting with, a heavy clutch or, weird shifter or anything. So that should be a really nice car to learn manual on. It's not like Honda perfection as far as manuals, in my opinion, but Elantra N is really good. I think it's gonna be a really good shifter, and hope it's not too hard for you. It's a nice, easy catch point in the Elantra N though. So I think you'll be off to the races here soon. I did a long time ago, if you haven't watched it, in the BRZ, so this is probably back in 2013 or 2012, I did a how to drive manual video. There's probably still some room for improvement there, as far as I'm sure there's much better videos out there that can teach you that. But if you want to see me showing you how to drive a manual in the BRZ, definitely check out that video. Good rule of thumb, at least when you're first learning. I know it might be painful, but a little more gas never. You don't stall doing too much gas. Now it does hurt the clutch. If you're really roasting it, but if you're ever in a real panic situation, you're worried about stalling, more gas is better than more clutch, as far as if you're deciding between those two. But the best of luck with all that, and should be a fun, exciting week for you, though. So congrats, I'm excited for you. And General Chicken, thank you so much for a super chat. They're asking, hey Matt, just saw the Rivian R3 recently. Wow, nice. Maybe you live near where they do some of the R&D testing, or maybe you saw it online. I don't know, but R3 looks promising. I think it's going to sell really well. And yeah, I wish it had CarPlay. I wish Rivian's had CarPlay, because that could, even Beth liked the styling on the R3, and or maybe I'm thinking of R2. Never mind. R2 is the one that I think, is going to be the more mainstream one. The R3 is going to be super sweet, though. It's like a slightly lifted Ioniq 5N almost, with like hot hatch vibes. That should be really cool. I'm excited for that one eventually too. But again, I wish they had CarPlay. That's my one hang up with Rivian. I'll never own one until they have CarPlay. But they're sweet, and I'm glad you got to see one recently. And I think they said, so I think it's supposed to be early 2026, I think, for R2, and late 2026, I think, or maybe 2027 for R3. But Rivian does great products, though. And I think that they have a bright future ahead of them. Even without the CarPlay. I think they'd have an even brighter future if they added smartphone integration, but I will digress there. We're also coming up on time here pretty soon, so we'll do the last few questions here, and we can head on out. But Vishal says, I'm Gen Z 25, and I'm definitely interested in learning manual someday. A couple of my friends are as well. We often joke to buy a manual car and learn. That's what most people did, honestly, is you bought the car and you figured out how to drive it home. And I see Chadwick says he's technically Gen Z as well. But yeah, like my Legacy GT was the first manual car that I ever bought. I was 17 when I bought that. Now, I did have the ability to learn on the work trucks at the dealership I was at. So I did learn, a little bit beforehand. So I can't claim that I bought the car and learned how to drive it. But I wasn't super good with starting on hills, especially because every car is different with that catch point. Nowadays, most modern manuals have a hill holder function, so you don't have to worry about rolling back. But my Legacy GT did not have that. So that was something. The first day I bought the car, one of my coworker buddies, he was like, look, you cannot be rolling back on hills, especially here in Pittsburgh. There's hills everywhere. So he's like, we got to go. So there was a hill on the dealer lot, basically, that was really steep. And he's like, I know this is your car you just bought. You don't want to be hard on the clutch, but he's like, you got to learn this. And I'm like, all right, you're right. And so it was painful, but like the first day I picked up this sweet 15,000 mile Legacy GT Spec B. I was, not being kind to the clutch, trying to figure out how to start on a hill flawlessly in my own car. It's one of those things you're really clenching hard and you're not enjoying that learning process, but it's one of those things, again, you get the hang of it eventually, and then it's just like riding a bike. The better you get at it, or the more you do it, the better you get at it. And then, once you learn it, it's a skill I think stays with you forever. You get rusty, over time, but I think, once you have the mechanics down, then you're off to the races, and it's all good after that. But yeah, it is fun to learn it, even if it is a little stressful at times. And I highly recommend it. And Chad, thank you so much for super chat. He says, my brother stopped on the side of the road when I was 16 and made me drive his manual home, like throwing someone in a pool to learn to swim. Yeah, kind of like that. You're right. But, sink or swim, right? No, that's awesome, though. Hopefully you did okay and it wasn't too terrifying. But that's a fun story. Thanks for sharing, Chad. And yeah, manuals it's really not that hard either. I think, again, if you have a good teacher and you have a car that's not super hard to drive a manual on, that's half the battle, is and then just giving yourself the grace that, like, look, you're going to be beaten up on the clutch a little bit. The car is not going to like it, but it's short-lived, and then you're good, so that's funny. Thanks for sharing, Chad. Thank you for the super chat as well. And let me see here. So yeah, last few questions here. Let me see. So Jordan says, have you taken the Caddy on a long drive yet? And does the stock navigation alert you to speed traps? We don't use the stock navigation. It just has Google Maps, but I'm always running Waze on long trips typically. And Waze will alert you to speed traps. Also, Google Maps and Apple Maps even now have started to do that a little bit. It's not super consistent, but I've been kind of surprised that they do sometimes do that. But the stock navigation, I guess Google Maps probably would, since the car runs Google Maps natively. I'm guessing the automotive version also would do the speed traps if the phone version does. So I think it might, but I'm not messing with. I don't ever mess with the stock infotainment system in the Caddy. I mean, I don't really drive it a whole lot either. It's mostly Beth's car, but I'm always using CarPlay, and that's all I'm really messing with, and that's the way I like it. I don't want to mess with what every car company thinks they should do on the infotainment. Like, just give me my CarPlay. That's all I need, and I'm good. But we have taken it on a long drive. We drove down to West Virginia with it once, and it did great. We went all the way to Fairmont and back without having to charge, and we had plenty of range to spare, which was great. So nice to have the big battery. Not a necessity, but it's nice to have that extra wiggle room there. So yeah, it's a great car though. I absolutely still just love that thing to death. And Jordan says, how is speed trap data collected? Is it user input? If Waze, it is. Waze is an actual community. I don't know how Google or Apple are doing it. And I feel like law enforcement's got to be coming for them, because if they're not getting it from users, then that means that like Google and Apple are actually like, snitching on where the cops are. So I'm not sure how they're getting that info, because I've looked and I don't see any way on Apple or on Google Maps to say there's a speed trap here. So I don't know how they're doing it. And unless they're pulling from some other database or something, or it's possible, since Google owns Waze, that maybe Google is pulling from Waze and their user reports, but I don't know how Apple's doing it. So I don't know. It's a good question. Notorious CRG, thank you so much for a super chat as well. He says, I'm fine with the RSX being a crossover, an EV crossover. I'm not fine with how it looks. Some designs I can't believe got approved, like the next gen Lexus ES. Yeah, and I think a lot of that stuff though too, it's one of those things where it just takes time. I think everyone, like, for example, speaking of Lexus, hated the Lexus IS when that first came out. For this generation, it's been around for like 10 years now. I remember everyone hating it. Everyone thought it was ugly, including myself. I still don't think it's the most amazing look, but you look at that and it's like, okay, well, that's fine now. Like, no one is actively complaining about Lexus IS styling anymore. So it's one of those things. I personally don't hate the RSX myself. ES is a little iffy in the front there. Again, for me, it wouldn't be a deal breaker if I was, wanting the car or something. But there are some cars where I'm like, man, that is some interesting styling, and I'm like, I don't know how that ever got approved, because it just seems like it's the kind of styling that only the designer could love. It's I can't remember. There's one car recently, not too long ago, that I reviewed, and I was like, man, like, how did this ever, get approved? And I can't remember which one it was. I mentioned it in the review. I was like, this is interesting styling. Some people will love it, some people will hate it, but I can't remember which one it was. Yeah. Anyway, let me see here. Thank you so much again for the super chat, Notorious CRG. And let me see here. So, Cam Jam, thanks for stopping by. He says, hi, Matt. I got a Renault G70 with a 2.5T today. Did a launch control, and holy crap, first DCT launch, and it didn't disappoint. It was rear-wheel drive, but hooked right up. Actually, so G70 is, if you're talking Genesis G70, that actually runs an 8-speed automatic. So there's no dual clutches in those. So that's why actually manual shifting is a little slow, but launch is, they do a pretty good launch control there, and the torque converter, you load it up nicely and it can take off. And that's a good motor. And also, so wait a minute, G70, maybe I'm thinking of something else, because G70 still runs the 2.0T. Because that's Stinger got the 2.5T. The Genesis, did they get the 2.5T too? Maybe they did. I feel like, when was the last G70 I reviewed? Maybe they did. Yeah, I'm just foggy on the memory. It's been a while since I've reviewed the G70. But yeah, but I do know that they still run the 8-speed torque converter. I wish they had the dual clutch. That'd be fun for a sporty version of the G70, but it's just that normal Genesis, yeah, 8-speed. But I'm glad you're enjoying the G70 though. That's cool. You got one as a rental. That's also I'm impressed you got a G70 rental car because I didn't know they were ever in a rental fleet. That's pretty cool. And glad you're enjoying it. It's fun. And Jazz says, I was told to get a truck to attract women. Is that true? Do women like men with trucks? Well, there's the jokes about, the bigger the truck, and I will let you finish the sentence. But beyond that, yeah, I don't know. Maybe you've heard some. I think the whole idea of any car to attract women is usually a lost cause, I guess is the right way to put it. I'm not going to veer into, my theories on, what attracts women and stuff, because I'm far from an expert on that. But what I can say is that, typically, my impressions over the years is that women, when we're talking about cars, if they are attracted to you because of your car, it's typically because it's an expensive car. People, not just women, and everyone is attracted to stability. Typically speaking, you want someone who's not broke. You want to be able to feed yourselves and supply for families and all that kind of stuff. So if the truck is an expensive truck, then by extension, yes, I think that can be it. But I think it really, to me, I think that's always the number one thing is money. And I think that kind of got confused with supercars because people think, oh, well, they like it because it's fast. It's like, no, they like it because it's expensive. Obviously there's plenty of women that like fast cars. I'm just saying the general, stereotype of I'm trying to attract a woman with my car. Get something with a luxury badge. That's I think, get something that's expensive because that shows you have money, you can provide, have your life in order or whatever, those types of things. Not to say, again, if you don't have a luxury brand, you don't have your life in order, but what I'm saying, that like, you're successful in your career and, all that kind of usual stuff that people can assume based on the car you drive. So that's really hope there, but trucks, again, it comes down to where you live too. I'm sure in Texas, trucks are looked on more favorably than, a blue city. Yeah, around here, actually, most women I know are not, they actually are repelled by trucks, generally speaking. So it's the exact opposite. But I think a lot of the truck buyers are not aware of that. They think it is still something that's helping their cause. Anyway, let me see here. E85, thanks for stopping by. And Vishal says, one of my buddy's parents had a 2021 Y. They were perfectly fine with it. Then the test drive of the new 26 Y turned into trading. In the 2021, it was that much of an improvement. Interesting. Well, I'm glad that, yeah, it sounds like they've made some really great improvements for sure to it. Let me see. Jeff Luke says, instructions unclear, got a semi-truck license and I talk to our old men. Yeah, well, that's even the funny thing with supercars, like, because I ran in that whole world for a little while there, where I was friends with a bunch of supercar owners in a past life, and I was running around Lamborghinis every weekend, and we mostly attracted dudes. That's, at the end of the day, like, who came up and talked to us? Guys. Obviously there is, again, a couple of ladies that also were interested in them, but like, and especially, supercars and stuff like that in general, it's not like you're even attracting older guys or something like that. It's always like young guys. So that's kind of what you're gonna be getting. You're gonna get a lot of teenage boys and in younger 20 somethings that are going to be coming over and running over to your Lamborghini. Everyone else, not so much. So that's typically the actual reality of being a supercar owner, is you're attracting a lot of young guys. That's about it. But anyway, let me see here. Yeti says, our 2025 Palisade did great with lane assist at first, but after a few thousand miles, it seems to have gotten worse. Interesting. That's surprising that got worse. I'm not sure why that would be, because I know they have said that it does like machine learning with highway drive assist, which you would hope would mean there's an improvement instead of going backwards. But I mean, that also doesn't surprise me because, like I said, the shortcomings I've found with Hyundai system as well. But I'm sorry it hasn't been better for you. And I hope that it does improve for you. Definitely let us know, report back if you have better luck with it in the future. Because I want it to do better and I want it to not be bad. But unfortunately, that's just been my honest take on it recently. And Jordan says, I had a 6-disc changer in my 2003 Dodge Stratus RT. That's awesome. That's cool. You had a Stratus RT as well. That's been a fun car to own. And Cam says, I buy and listen to CDs a lot as a Gen Z kid. Just bought Breakaway by Kelly Clarkson on Friday. Nice. Well, it's cool that there's some appreciation for that. And yeah, CDs are fun. And also still the best sound quality, aside from maybe Tidal or something. I don't know. Or, some of the lossless files you can download, the FLAC files. But outside of that, CD is still where it's at from a sound quality standpoint. And let me see. Also, sorry, apologies to Torius CRG. I missed the other super chats. He said, any new BMW as far as with the styling. Gotcha. Yeah, that's the BMWs. I mean, some of them I have grown to be okay with. Like the X7 is fine. I think the 2 Series is actually fine. And little scoop for you, for all of you who are still hanging in here, 13 minutes past time here. Tomorrow's review. I just on Friday filmed a BMW 230i X-Drive, the new generation here. It's a 2024, so it's a lightly used one. But I think that's a really good car. I'll save all my impressions for the review. But I think that's one that I think the styling is actually okay, in my opinion. Actually, I prefer the regular 2 Series styling to the M2. But yeah, I agree. Most other BMWs right there with you on the styling. And also he says, I buy my cars for me. Women can take them or leave them. Yeah, and that's the way it should be. Buy a car for yourself. If you're buying anything for that matter, to please someone else or because you're looking for approval from someone, it's always a losing game. There's always someone with something better. There's even at Monterey, you could have one of those Daytona SP3s and someone else to say, well, I bought the one for $26 million that's going to charity. You can always one up somebody, so it's absolutely great advice, Notorious CRG. Buy what you want for yourself. You enjoy it. Don't buy a car to impress anybody else, for sure. Let me see. Let me see here. I see B. Mitchell says, the only reason I chose the B&O audio system on my 19 Mustang GT was to get a CD player, mixed up for not being able to get an 8-track adapter. That's true. Yeah, and that is fun. I remember, yeah, you had to get the upgrade there to get the CD player. I loved having the CD player in the Bullet. That was really nice to have. I had the Bullet soundtrack in that slot, always ready to go. So the second I had a Challenger or Charger behind me, I put on the chase music and I was ready to tango. It was fun. Chadwick says, yeah, I watched it back in 2013 and my friend, I think I could pay to revisit though. Oh, well, yeah, definitely if you want, but if you've already seen it, you already know the mechanics. Definitely don't bother going back. I'm sure it's probably cringy to watch back all these years later. And Auto Dan says, anytime you want to discuss car and driving nostalgia, let me know. I could bore you for hours. I'm right there with you. I think we all enjoy discussing nostalgia here for the most part. So always happy to chat about that. And let's see. Steven says, if you had to stick to one car brand for 10 years, which car brand would you take? And if so, why? One daily and one weekend. Toyota. As far as daily, GR Corolla, weekend would be GR86 or Supra. If I could pick, either one, that would be. And I mean, because I love RAV4 Prime. I think that'd be a really great daily. I love Crown Signia. I'd love to have one of those as a daily if I didn't want something that had a plug. Toyota, that's a really easy choice for me because they do such good stuff. They're carrying the mantle that Subaru dropped the ball on with STI being discontinued. GR Corolla, is filling that gap. And just, what other car company has a hot hatch and 2 sports cars? There's very few, and it's awesome that Toyota, again, has made them all very affordable and made them really good cars, in my opinion, as well. Let me see. Cam says, yeah, the G70 got the 2.5 for 2024. That's right. Okay. Because I reviewed one. for some reason I was blanking on that because I know for a while there it hadn't gotten it, and I'm glad, yeah, they got it in 24. So appreciate that. And he says that the launch was quick for a torque converter. Yeah, that's the great thing about torque converters. I mean, you don't get the banging into gear like you get with the dual clutch, but that's always why drag racers have loved the automatics for so long, because you can really preload that torque converter, and some of them even have like these stall converters and all that other stuff on it. But they're great for launching still. And I see Small Cookie says that Google Maps does have a user report. Okay, well, thank you. Now I'll have to look for that. I swear the last time I checked I couldn't find it, but maybe they've made it a little easier to find here now. And Auto Dance says, needy women like trucks. I mean, I won't speculate on that. I mean, everyone has their things they like for whatever reason they like it for. And I don't want to, yuck someone's yum. So if, people enjoy them, that's great. But yeah, just for me, every time I have a truck press car, especially if it's something really ostentatious, like a Raptor or something, it's like all the jokes you can imagine. Everyone tells me during the week, everyone that knows me, like, wow, you got that big old truck here this week. Like, how you feeling? It's always interesting. Especially, I had that Ram Cummins, with the diesel earlier this year, and that is like the polar opposite of my personality. And that was interesting to drive around and like feeling very self-conscious in that vehicle myself. And I see Fonz says, what up, man? I love your videos. Happy Sunday, King. You're one of one, man. I appreciate that. Thank you for the kind words, and thanks for stopping by and for the support. It really means a lot. I see Auto Dance is only people that are interested in cars or other dudes. I mean, there are a lot of ladies, and that's why I love seeing the female car, influencers, reviewers, tuners that are out there. There's a lot of them that are doing it, whether we're talking the Amelia Hartfords, that are doing it in a big way. And seeing her blow up has been awesome. The Sarah and Tunes out there, all these that really do some cool stuff. So I'm happy that it's, there are a lot of awesome ladies in this world as well, loving the cars too. Hyper Shadow says, the Genesis G70, I got the 2.5 in place of the 2.0 with 300 horsepower. It's a good option now over the V6. And Matt, you're not an expert on women. You got Beth. You got it going on, brother. I appreciate that. I will be the first to admit, though, Beth can tell you this too. I mean, I definitely was not a ladies' man. I've always been very shy and not outgoing. I'm an introvert by nature. And so, that's why I was single for a long time, because especially, I mean, I was in the early-ish eras of, online dating, but I was out of the dating game before Tinder and all that came onto the scene. So for me, it was, a lot of years of being single and struggling with my own awkwardness and all that. So thankfully, though, yeah, I found Beth, and I got very lucky with her for sure. Let me see. Truck and Car Guy says, I bought the wagon for me, and yet people keep wanting to buy it off of me. Well, that's a good problem to have, because you got an awesome wagon. It's awesome you got the Magnum. And B. Mitchell says, it took all evening but drink. You're right. Yeah, we had to go 2 hours and 20 minutes in, but I finally did manage to work Jerk Rolla into the conversation here. So, oh, man, that's funny. And Michelle says, if Tu was here, he'd be coming out with a Toyota show comment. Well, I appreciate you picking up the slack for him there, Michelle. And Jordan says, last question. If we hashtag your channel into a YouTube news story, does it ping, or what other ways can we ping you? So to tag me, like if you're trying to get my attention on something, the best way is probably just to, send it as like a DM on Instagram, or, send it over an email or something like that. Because otherwise, you can, like on Instagram, you can @ me, obviously, and same thing. I installed TikTok because I'm going to be doing that for the second channel here that I'll be debuting here in a couple of weeks as well. And so, I've been on that as well. So if you're on TikTok, you can also, send me something that way. But as far as, other ways to ping me, on YouTube, the only way to on YouTube would be to @ me in the comments of my own videos. That's the only way I'm going to get notified about anything. So yeah, I don't think there's any other way as far as car news or any YouTube news story. I don't think there's any other way. Maybe if you mention me in a comment on another person's channel, I think I'd get a notification for that. So that maybe be the other way you could possibly do it. I think, yeah, that should be, that'll probably work. Sorry, it took me a while to figure that out, but yeah, I think you just do an in a comment, and that should do it. Let me see. Why it says he's back from his cruise. He smoked an S5 and a GTI. All right, well, glad you're having fun there, Etch. And Hyper Shadow says, yeah, taking a shot as well. I appreciate that, everyone that's drinking on my behalf because of GR Corollas. I apologize. And Yeti says, can't wait to catch the next one, Matt. Always nice to see you. Thanks for stopping by, everyone. It's been another fun hangout here tonight. Always a pleasure hanging out with you guys, and hope you have a great week here. Like I said, stay tuned for the 230 review here on Monday, and also the EX30 I'll be posting up here on Thursday, and then I'll be doing some more used stuff here after that, so stay tuned for all that. But anyway, yeah, thank you all so much for watching. Have a great week, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.